Hello everyone. If you are new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do it, thanks. By the way, I also have a Luffy fan fiction channel. If you are interested, the link is in the description. Dragonslayer by KitsuneDragon. He said he saw great potential in my small body and he raised me. Because of him I lived, I learned, and I finally found someone I could call friend, even if he didn't call me the same. I am his son. I am his student, the Dragonslayer of Aknologia. I don't own anything. Adios.
Grassy plains, western region, fury the sun shone high in the sky, casting its golden light over the emerald green pastures and crystal blue waters that lay below. Blue jays tweeted within their nests amongst the few trees that lay scattered across the landscape. The grassy plains of western fury were indeed a sight to behold. Relatively untouched by mankind, these plains made this area an ideal area to just simply relax or take a comfortable stroll while taking in the sights and sounds of nature. Urza, we've been walking for nearly 12 hours. How long until we reach this place? One Lucy Heartfilia whined as she trudged behind the Titania of Fairy Tail. Don't whine so much, Lucy. It's unbecoming of a warrior to complain in the face of battle. Urza replied as she walked in front of the blonde. Said blonde's eyes narrowed and scratched her cheek. But we're not even in the face of battle and I'm no warrior, she said. Urza's brown eyes met Lucy's own and the redhead smiled at her. Lucy suddenly gained a feeling of dread which crawled down her spine. I don't like that look in her eyes. Don't worry, Lucy. You say you're not a warrior now, but after this session of training, you will become a mage worthy of bearing that mark on your hand. Lucy blinked. So you're saying I'm not worthy of the mark? She deadpanned. Lucy had just been insulted twice, but the busty blonde knew that her friend didn't mean it in that way and was merely just emphasizing the points she was making. At least that's what I hope she's doing when she says that, she added as an afterthought. Not at all, Lucy. You said it yourself, you are not a warrior. However, all I am saying to you is that though you are not strong now, after this training with my masters, you will be shown just how strong you can become, Urza said. The two fairy tale mages continued trekking down the grassy path, rabbits and insects jumping out of the way and hiding in the brush from the two humans. As they climbed over a small hill, Lucy's eyes widened as a question popped into her mind. Urza? The redhead grunted, notifying her traveling companion that she was paying attention. Though it may not be as nice sounding as it sounds in my head, why are you going to see your masters? Surely someone like you would have no need for masters since you're such a well-equipped swordsman. Urza smiled at the innocence of Lucy's question. Lucy, I grew up in a place where I was shown just how weak I was. I hated being weak, and when I was able to escape that place, I ran for as long as I could and as hard as I could. I came to Fairy Tail and Master Makarov took me in as a member of the guild, but though I found happiness with the family I had, I realized that I did not possess the strength to protect them. So within the first few weeks of joining, I ventured out of the guild and I trained in the art of the blade. But, in the words of my masters, I was merely swinging a piece of metal, not a sword. My masters found me and they took me in and taught me true swordsmanship. However, due to my connection with Fairy Tail, I had left before I could finish my training. Even though I am seen as a master by many, I have not truly been granted that title, Urza said with a frown. Lucy's eyes softened. How long has it been since you left? Urza gave a sad smile as she replied, I haven't seen them in 6 years. Did the Ogono Fujin really hit you that hard, Urza? Urza clutched her armored stomach, frozen in her walking. Yes, he did. However, I cannot say that he was not right. My arrogance has always been my downfall. The mark of Fairy Tail, the mark of the strongest guild. Much like Natsu did, I let that title get to my head. I stopped training as I did and my arrogance grew due to my endless stream of victories. That one loss struck me harder than you can imagine, Lucy. To be called weak is one thing, to be defeated is another, but to be called out and be completely and utterly crushed before being belittled to add salt to the wound. That is something else entirely. Urza raised her head before walking forward, Lucy jogging slightly to catch up to her. Silence filled the air as Urza and Lucy continued to walk. Neither spoke a word after their previous conversation and the seconds ticked by, and though it seemed as if many hours had passed, only a single hour had went by in the day. Finally, after much walking, Urza stopped, Lucy doing the same. Urza, why are we stopping? She asked. The sword user did not respond and merely walked a bit more before a smirk formed on her face. The celestial spirit user noticed the change in her facial expression and wondered just what her fellow fairy tale mage was thinking before following after her. The two climbed a rather steep hill before stopping at the top of it. Looking down from the hill, along the flat land below, there lay a single wooden house that sat beside a small lake. Is that it? The brown-eyed blonde asked. The red-haired woman responded with a nod. Yes, we're here. The two then took off down the slope of the hill towards the small house. Due to Urza being more physically able than the younger female, She had arrived before Lucy and was currently tapping her boot in impatience. "Lucy, you're much too slow. Shut up. I'm not a superwoman like you. Ms. I wield 100 swords and possess super strength," Lucy retorted. Urza merely huffed at that. 100, PFFTI can use 300, she muttered. However, Urza's ears twitched as she heard something that caused the grass to rustle. Her chocolate-colored orbs scanned the grassy plains before she looked back at Lucy, eyes wide in shock and realization. She then took off at a fast pace before holding out her arm. A magic seal sprung forth from the nothingness of the air before a sword appeared in her hand. "Lucy, get down. Insert music. Fairy tale Urza's theme." "Huh?" Lucy blinked, wondering what Urza was talking about. Suddenly, a flash of steel crossed her vision only for it to be halted as Urza appeared in front of her and blocked the blade that would have taken off her head, noting how close the offending sword was to her neck. The user of the attacker was hidden by the tall grass, but the hand that held the blade was visible. The hand was slightly pale in color and was gripped tightly around the brown-colored shaft. The sword had a round handguard and the blade was about as long as an adult female's arm. The blade was a shining silver and had two prongs sticking out of it, one near the tip and another closer to the handguard. "Lucy, run," Urza cried, looking back at her friend. Lucy didn't ask questions and did as she was told and took off. However, as she did that, Urza had turned back and her eyes widened as blue sparks of lightning coursed along the length of the blade. Her muscles froze as the lightning caused her muscles to contract tightly and the sound of humming greeted her ears. Though one would not be able to see it from afar, Urza saw it clear as day. The blade was not humming, but actually vibrating at a high frequency due to the charge that was being conducted through it. The high-frequency vibrations then allowed the blade to begin cutting nicely through the hardened steel of Urza's own sword. This sword. It can't be. Urza quickly let go and dropped to the ground just as her blade was sliced neatly in two. A small amount of red hair was cut from Urza's head, showing just how close she had been to being decapitated. The sword then went back into the brush and Urza turned to look back at Lucy, who had still been running. "Shit, she's going after Lucy," Urza thought and quickly became enveloped in a golden light. Requip. Flight armor. The light died down just as quickly as it had come. The Requip master of Fairy Tail now stood tall with an armor that actually lacked anything that would be able to make it armor. There was no breastplate, merely a bra-like top that revealed a large amount of cleavage like most of her armors and bore a cheetah print pattern. There was some bare armor for part of it, in correspondence to Urza's breasts, and some fur lining the lower edges. She was sporting a pair of revealing black shorts, with a belt holding a cloth hanging over Urza's left leg attached to them. Her arms were covered by dark armbands reaching up just below her shoulders, with Urza's left arm being protected by cheetah-patterned armor. Her legs were covered in similar stockings reaching up to her thighs, with armored, asymmetric high-heeled boots over them. Her left leg, though, was covered with an armored boot reaching up to the knee, which was protected by a cheetah-patterned knee guard. The right leg was covered by a boot only reaching up to part of Urza's calf. The outfit was completed by a large collar around Urza's neck and by a tail hanging from the back of her shorts, both made of bushy fur, plus a pair of large cheetah's ears adorning both sides of Urza's head. With a burst of speed, the ability of her flight armor, Urza took off after her friend, the two short swords she held in her hands gripped tightly. A trail of dust and chopped up grass and scattered dirt marked her path. Urza noted the shining steel of the sword that had previously attacked her and her blonde guild mate. Leaping through the air, Urza landed just a few feet short of Lucy and stabbed her blades into the ground, using them as anchors. There was a sudden flash of movement and Urza lashed out with her armored legs and sparks flew as Lucy turned to see the attacker being held off by Urza. The attacker grinned, revealing very sharp teeth, similar to that of a shark's. A feminine voice rang throughout the air as the figure spoke. "Oh, what's this?" The attacker spoke with a surprised, but also excited tone. The attacker then leapt back before laughing loudly. "Urza-chan, you've certainly grown up, haven't you?" Lucy stared in shock as to how the person who attacked them, nearly killing both in the process, could just suddenly shift personalities from cold-blooded killer to a happy-go-lucky person who somehow had a relation to Urza Scarlet. Urza stared at the woman before her with a steely gaze as she observed the woman's blades once more. There were two of them, lightning sparking off the prong-like attachments, gripped tightly by the woman. "So it really is you." The armored red head spoke. Lucy's eyes widened when Urza dropped onto one knee, head bowed low as she stabbed her blades into the ground. Never in her life had Lucy imagined a day where Urza would kneel to anyone, especially an enemy. Looking over their assailant, Lucy took in her appearance. The attacker was obviously female. Her skin was slightly pale in contrast to both Lucy's and Urza's own skin color and she had a very angular facial structure. Her eyes were black and was relatively short, even shorter than Lucy. She had long red hair, but was several shades darker than Urza's own scarlet color. There was a similarly colored cloth that was distinctively tied at both ends so that they protruded upwards, which was wrapped neatly around her head. However, due to the similar color, it was almost impossible to distinguish the cloth from her hair. Bandages were tied loosely around her neck and seemed to descend to her upper body, but it was covered by her loose, pin-striped, long-sleeved shirt that she wore. She wore a pair of black pants that resembled hakama and had a black obi wrapped around her waist. Striped leg warmers were worn around her calves and stopped at her ankles. A pair of black, open-toe sandals were worn on her feet.
Haha, you still haven't lost that deep respect for your superiors, it seems. However, as much as I like seeing the titania of fairy tale kneel before me, I'm not one for such formalities. Besides, the woman grinned widely, I don't like to see my students bow to me. Urza nodded as she rose back to her feet and in a flash of light, took off her flight armor and reappeared in her normal Heart Cruise armor. Meanwhile, Lucy was still trying to wrap her head around what just happened before her.
Not to interrupt the reunion, but just why did you call Urza your student? Who are you? Lucy asked. The woman rolled her eyes at the blonde before stabbing one of her swords into the dirt and leaned against it lazily, while twirling the second one without a care in the world. Well, Blondie, Urza is my student because I am her master, though personally, I prefer the title sensei. As for who I am. The woman grinned widely once more to show the rows of shark-like teeth once more. I'm the wielder of the twin lightning blades, the Kiba. My name is Amayuri Ringo, nice to meet ya. Lucy gulped as she felt a feeling of dread wash over her as she watched the predatory look that glazed over Ringo's eyes. Hi. I am Lucy Heartfilia. The red-haired sword user tapped her chin as she walked up the nervous Lucy, circling her like a lion around cornered prey. She then poked Lucy's arm, followed by stretching the young girl's cheeks. As said cheek flesh snapped back into place, Lucy muttered a small hiss of pain as her cheeks were now a bright red from the pain. However, she was not expecting the final blow as Amayuri slapped Lucy rather hard on her ass. Eep! The teen yelped as she gripped her painting rear and Amayuri gave a lengthy grunt as she mused over the blonde. So, Urza-chan, you returned for me to finish your training? She asked her former, now current, pupil. The Titania of Fairy Tale nodded to her fellow redhead. Yes, Amayuri-sensei, she replied. Well, she definitely has a rather nice build. She's thin, do you not eat, girl? Amayuri asked the blonde. Lucy looked a bit flustered at that question only for Amayuri to continue speaking. However, if you wish for your other sensei and I to teach her alongside you, Blondie here is going to have to put on some muscle. She's a little weakling, probably a sheltered girl who has lived a posh life if her clothing is anything to go by. Despite the common look of them, the fabric her clothes are made from have a high quality to them. You're a follower, not a fighter. You're a hopeless case, Blondie. Lucy's eyes widened at how unbelievably blunt this person was. Oi, who are you to tell me that? She exclaimed, but suddenly regretted the verbal strike as she suddenly found one of the Kiba blades pointed at her throat. The shorter woman snarled at her superior in terms of stature as lightning sparked at the tip of the blade, causing the hairs on the back of Lucy's neck to raise slightly. I am your superior in every way, except for height. She mumbled that last part before returning to glare at the Heartfilia heir. You are physically weak and your magic reserves need improving. Your keys at your hip state that you are a celestial spirit key user, but it's because of that you are weak. You let your spirits do all your fighting for you, as is the weakness of all of your types of mage. I doubt you've been in any real combat situations and you tend to hang back when in a fight. If I have not stated anything that has not been truth, please state your disagreement, Blondie. Lucy's head dropped and she blinked rapidly to hold back the tears that threatened to fall from the verbal lashing she had just received. Well, Ringo spoke before noting the shine beneath Lucy's bangs, which shielded her eyes. The red-haired swordswoman rolled her eyes before turning to Urza. Really, Urza-chan? These are you nakama? She's crying. I've told you much worse things and you didn't even shed a tear even if your left eye is. That's enough, Ringo-sensei. Urza snapped before frowning at her master. Amayuri twirled the kiba in her hands before sighing as she noted the silent Lucy who was still looking depressed, but to her surprise, Ringo saw Lucy move. But not in a way she expected. She expected the blonde to probably have grown some backbone, defend herself. But she simply turned her back on her and began to walk away. Where are you going, Lucy? Urza asked. I'm going back to the guild. Obviously I'm not wanted here. I'm a hopeless case. Isn't that right, Ringo-san? Lu gazed, but the tears streaming down her face ruined the image. Amayuri stood silently for a moment before sighing. Yes, it's true, you are a hopeless case. Lucy frowned as she wiped away her tears and was about to continue walking only to be stopped as Ringo suddenly appeared in front of her. How? She asked mentally, only to be further surprised as Ringo answered her thought. I'm that fast. Anyway, you're a hopeless case. Is what other teachers would say after they did my kind of inspection, but I'm not like any other teacher. I am a sword master who has taught little Urza-chan here to become the toughest female mage out of all of her little friends, and I have the balls to say that she is possibly the strongest female in Fury, next to me of course. Because of my pride in my skills, I can therefore say that there is no such thing as a hopeless case to me. Though you are weak, I will train you, Miss Heartfilia. It doesn't matter how long or how short you stay here with me and my partner Sensei to Urza-chan. I will make you competent in the art of using a sword, but if swords are not your style, well. Ringo grinned toothily. I will show you why Urza is a master of so many forms of weaponry. Lucy's eyes widened before turning to Urza. The redhead gave a small smile to her friend and draped her arm around the blonde. Don't worry, Lucy. Despite Ringo Sensei's tough methods, the results she yields is nothing short of amazing. Lucy looked at the reassuring gaze of her fellow guild mate before turning to the other redhead. She gave a little laugh before nodding. Alright, I'll stay, if you'll have me, Ringo-san. That's Ringo Sensei to you, Blondie. Now get yourself and Urza-chan to the house. I need to introduce you to Urza-chan's partner teacher. Partner teacher? You did imply there was a second person teaching Urza. Who is she? Amayuri grinned toothily. First off, it's a he, and secondly, I will show you who he is as soon as you all get inside. She then ushered the two girls back to the house that they had seen from the top of the hill from earlier. Amayuri kicked open the door and waltzed, pulling Urza and Lucy in as she kept a surprisingly tight grip on their wrists. Oi Kisame, you lazy ass, come and see who's back. Somewhere in the house, a loud crash was heard before the sound of footsteps on hard wood floors met their ears. God damn it, woman. How many times have I told you not to fucking shout at me when I'm trying to fucking sleep? A male voice echoed through the house. Amayuri let go of Urza and Lucy before crossing her arms in front of her chest and tapped her foot on the ground as she waited for the arrival of her fellow teacher to Urza. Geez, you're always so loud too, can't you just? Who are they? The owner of the voice spoke. Lucy and Urza looked over the man, but Lucy looked more intently because, well, the man was fucking blue, for God's sakes. Blue skin and blue hair. I mean, sure, Levi had blue hair, but it looked better on her for some reason. The man, as previously noted, had light blue skin and dark blue hair that seemed to naturally spike upwards in a straight vertical direction. His eyes were purely round with beady pupils, and he also had sharp, shark-like teeth like Amayuri. He was well built, his body sporting lean muscle that was gained from years of hard work if the few scars on his chest were of any indication, but he wasn't large like Elfman, though he was obviously taller than Elfman, probably by a few inches. He wore a black, long-sleeved shirt which had a picture of a great white shark on it, with black pants that stopped at his ankles, and was currently barefoot. Lucy, this is my good friend, partner, roommate, housemate, fellow teacher to Urza-chan and annoyance, Kisame Hoshigaki. Kisame, this is Lucy Heartfilia. She gestured to the blonde, to which Kisame gave a polite nod to her. The busty blonde returned the nod before Ringo began pointing at Urza. And I'm sure you can guess who this is. Kisame blinked in confusion as he looked at the blonde before turning to the armored redhead. He then blinked even more rapidly before rubbing his eyes and pinching himself as if asking if he were dreaming. No. He shook his head with disbelief while gaining a toothy grin that was eerily similar to that of Amayuri's. Hell yeah. The red-haired Kiba wielder nodded with her own toothy grin. No. He spoke once more with disbelief in his voice. Urza-chan? Urza gave a weak wave to the blue, shark-like man. It's a pleasure to see you again. Kisame-sensei. Suddenly she found herself face to face with Kisame before being pulled into a tight hug. It's good to see you, kiddo. My, you sure grew up. What do you have there? D-cups or something? You were flat the last time I saw you. But then again, you were 13 when I last saw you, and that was what, 6 years ago? Kisame asked. Yes, Kisame-sensei. Urza answered. Kisame laughed before resting the young woman down and ruffled her red hair. We missed having you here, Urza-chan. Amayuri and I were sad we had no one else to train, but now look, you're back. And you brought another person with you. Luigi, right? It's Lucy, damn it. Why does everyone mix that up? Lucy gripped her hair, going into an anime rage mode, fire breath and all. Kisame backed away from the temperamental blonde before turning back to Urza. He smiled cheekily at her and she smiled back, only for her face to suddenly pale when she heard a familiar sound. G. Oh no, she whispered as her eyes opened to see Kisame now holding a giant thing, wrapped up in bandages. Kisame grinned widely as he undid some of the bandages, and Lucy and Urza both stared with wide eyes as dark blue scales poked through. A large mouth seemed to appear at the tip of the blade. The blade suddenly bent its shape as if it were alive, which it was. G. The sword growled out. Samahata says it's nice to see you. But, Urza-chan, you still need to be punished for running away without permission and without telling us 5 years ago. Kisame was accompanied by Amayuri, the kiba sparking dangerously in her hands. We got 5 years of punishments bottled up in us, Urza-chan, and we're going to go through a lot of them by the time we're done with you. Urza's eyes widened. She took a step back as they took a step forward. A sweat drop formed on the back of Urza's head as she saw the maniacal grins on their faces, clutching their respective blades tightly. One step back, one step forward. One step back, one step forward. Requip. Flight armor. Urza then turned tail and quickly sped off. As SXY as you look in that thing, you're no getting off that easy kiddo, Amayuri roared as she and Kisame sped after their pupil. Watch the house for a while, we're gone, Luigi. This might take a while, Kisame called back. Lucy could only gawk in shock, her jaw likely to have been touching the ground at this point. The mighty Urza, Titania of Fairy Tail, toughest female in all of Fairy Tail, was frightened, and running away. What the hell just happened? She then blinked as she registered Kisami's shout out before going into a rage once more, and my name's frickin' Lucy, damn it. 3 hours later Lucy watched with fascination as Urza, now clothed in her regular Heart Cruise armor, recovered from her numerous mortal wounds. Kisami's blade, Samahata, apparently had the unbelievable ability to convert magic energy it stored by eating Kisami's from his own massive reserves into healing magic. Urza was recently covered in cuts, slashes, bruises, more bruises, electrical burns, 2 kicks to the ass as evidenced by the imprints of Amayuri's boots, and finally a very, very long drag through the dirt and muck of the grasslands by her hair as Kisame dragged her along. Of course there was more after that, but the list was much too long to recall everything they just did in the span of 2 hours, though Kisame did say he had a laugh when he saw Amayuri force the Titania of Fairy Tail to the ground and began to spank her. Quit opinion. Kisame commented only to receive a slap upside the head from Amayuri. Ow. Kisame stated in a monotone, rubbing his head. As Urza finished healing, Samahata grinned before muttering another GGGGG, before slithering away from her and resting on Kisami's lap, purring as if it were cat as Kisame stroked it. That's one weird sword. Lucy commented. Samahata growled, turning to Lucy, but Kisame patted it. Now Samahata, she didn't mean it. You didn't mean it, right? He spoke with a fake grin on his face. Lucy's sweat dropped as she backed away from the hissing sharkskin blade. Nope, I didn't. You're the greatest sword ever. Lucy gave a shaky thumbs up. Samahata seemed to stare Lucy down before giving a motion of acceptance before lying back flat on its back. Or would it be front? Does a sword even have a back and front? All these questions went through Lucy's head before Amayuri and Kisame rose to their feet. Urza and Lucy watched the 2 swordsmen as they gained serious looks. Now then, Urza-chan. Lucy, why are you 2 here? Amayuri asked, dark eyes fixated on them. Ringo-sensei, I have recently been defeated in combat and have come to the realization that I am in need of further training to become stronger. Much stronger. Strong enough to hopefully beat this person someday. I brought Lucy along because, as you stated before, Ringo-sensei, Lucy is weak. Lucy's sweat dropped at that. Way to be blunt, Urza. The blonde thought. However, she has the potential to be a great mage and so I brought her along to learn from you both. Hopefully in the ways of the sword since you are both so proficient in that. But as Ringo-sensei stated, you are both not limited to only the sword and so if Lucy can just learn how to defend herself without the aid of others or without having to rely on her celestial spirits, she can better aid Fairy Tail. Please, Ringo-sensei, Kisame-sensei. Urza dropped down to the floor and bowed lowly. Make me your disciple once more and take Lucy under your wing as well. You know my answer already, Urza-chan. However, Amayuri turned to Kisame who looked over his past pupil and Lucy. Kisame frowned as he watched the strong-willed woman swallow the great amounts of pride she had to admit she was not strong enough and show a greater amount of humility, bow before him. He then turned to Lucy. Well, huh? The girl blinked her brown eyes at him with an amount of innocence he found unnatural. I'm waiting. Lucy blinked in confusion once more before noticing Urza's glance. She then caught the hidden message and dropped to the floor and bowed lowly. Please take me under your wing along with Ringo-sensei, Kisame-san. I will do whatever I can so that I won't be a burden to my nakama or my guild any longer. I'm tired of being the one who has always needed protecting. I beg of you. Lucy added for emphasis. Don't be petty, Lucy. I don't expect my students to beg. Now get up. The both of you before I kick your nicely shaped asses to your feet. Lucy and Urza nodded before rising and gave shorter bows of thanks. Thank you, Kisame-sensei. They spoke simultaneously. Kisame nodded before looking over at Urza. Urza. The 3 of us have quite a bit of work to catch up on. Amayuri and I still have a great deal of things for you to learn. By the way, how long has your guild master allowed you time off? Kisame asked. Urza shrugged. He never gave a specific time, but he said that we would be able to stay away for as long as we wished unless we are called in by the guild for emergency reasons or until we think we are to come back. You master is very soft-hearted. Hard to believe he's a wizard saint, Kisame mused. Master is very kind, but in his defense, should he ever go into battle he rarely knows the meaning of the term, holding back, Urza stated. Kisame nodded and showed off his sharp teeth once more as he smiled. Sounds like a good guy to drink with. He has a drinking problem too. I like this master guy, Kisame said as he turned to Amayuri. Same here. Amiyuri laughed before turning back to the two fairy tale mages. Alright you two, saddle up. Urza, you're with Kisame to cover up the slack you missed since I pretty much taught you every single acrobatic skill in the book I know and then some. Lucy, you're with me. Urza gave a nod to her female sensei before walking off with the shark-like man that was Kisame Hoshigaki. Lucy then turned to Amiyuri as she watched Kisame and Urza leave the upstairs bedroom and headed outside into the grassy plains themselves. Don't slam the door when you leave, Amiyuri yelled, but it was in vain for as she did so. Both had already left, the door slamming shut behind them. The lightning sword wielder pinched the bridge of her nose and muttered a few curses towards her male friend and one or two at Urza. The red-haired woman then rose up and turned to leave the room. Come with me. Amiyuri spoke, her voice cold as steel. Lucy gulped as she followed the shorter, but stronger, female. Moving down from the stairs, the shark-toothed woman navigated through the house and suddenly both young women came to a stop as they reached the back of the house in an area that looked like a living room. There was just a simple coffee table, a few side tables with some lamps to accompany them and two couches. A single window provided a beautiful view of the western Fiorian grasslands with the mountains of the north located eastbound and a large crystal blue lake lay a far distance away, but the sunlight that reflected off of its surface made it known. Why are we here? Isn't this a living room? Lucy asked. Ringo didn't answer and merely walked over to where the wall was and grabbed a part of it before the wall seemed to slide open as she pulled the wall open. Lucy watched in awe as the room suddenly lit up as electrical lacrima lit up the hidden sanctum. Lucy gaped as she saw probably every single weapon imaginable. From shuriken and kunai, to ball and chains and maces, to double-bladed axes and spears, too.
Alright, that's enough gazing. Amiyuri snapped her fingers in front of the brown-eyed blonde, snapping her out of her stupor.
Now Kisame and I have been proficient in every single weapon you find in this room. Though, swords are our specialty, so first off, I'm going to give you a few of the sword blades and see how you like them. Lucy nodded and suddenly she leapt back with a scream that would make even a little girl shake her head in pity. A broadsword lay at Lucy's feet, rattling on the ground. Oi, catch the damn thing next time, I don't want you breaking these things, the redhead roared. What? You threw it at me, you could have killed me with it. Well, you won't die if you catch it, I could lose a hand. You have another one. Why do you think you have two? Both women seethed at each other before Lucy bent down and gripped the handle of the broadsword before heaving. Her face turned red with effort, but the broadsword was exceedingly heavy for someone of Lucy's physical condition. Besides her being in great shape, she wasn't built for heavy lifting or strength. Amiyuri observed that before picking up the gargantuan blade as if it were a toothpick and rested it back on its mantle. She then scanned the shelves before taking out a nodashi. How about this one? She tossed the sheathed blade at her. Lucy, seeing the sword was in its sheath, actually caught it, earning a mocking round of applause from her teacher. Great, you caught it. I hate her. Lucy thought with a twitching eyebrow. Lucy then drew the blade and held it high, watching it with awe at how it shone in the light. She gave it a single swing, but Amiyuri stopped her from performing another. Why'd you take it? Lucy asked. The blade is much too long and a nodashi, though lighter, is still heavy for someone like you if your arms shaking were any indication. Here, take this katana. It's much lighter and 4 times as short as a nodashi blade, so it may suit you better. Lucy caught the katana as she tossed the nodashi back to Amiyuri blade and swung it. She gave it a vertical and horizontal slice before going into a rotation and attacking like how Urza had once done. But her grip slipped and the katana spun through the air. Amiyuri gave her an angry look as she expertly caught the blade by its handle in midair, a testament to her skills as a weapons user. Alright, seems anything sword related is out of the loop. Axes and spears are also out due to the heaviness. I doubt you'd be suited for bows and arrows, seeing as how you'd have to learn to take into account wind speed, wind direction, arrow length, the type of arrowhead being used, the type of bow being used and whatnot in order to properly use the bow and arrow. How are you and Kisame-sensei able to learn to use all these? You pick up a few things when you're in war, kid. Learning is easy, mastering was the hard part. Anyway, my life story is not something a young one like you would want to hear. You'd probably get bored by the time I finished my childhood. Amiyuri gave a dry chuckle as she went through the weapons once more, placing the katana back where it belonged. Lucy watched the red-haired woman with a confused expression. What happened to you and Kisame? Lucy thought. Alright, let's continue. Maces. Lucy shook her head as she flexed her bicep, silently referring to her arm strength, which wasn't all that great. Ball and chain. Another negative. Lucy gave a thoughtful look as Amiyuri did the same. Do you have any guns? Lucy asked. Amiyuri raised an eyebrow at that. You're asking a wielder of blades and bows and arrows if she has a gun? Lucy, guns are for wimps who are too afraid to get up close and personal with the enemy and who are too weak to look at the sight of blood when bringing them down. You're that type of person, aren't you? Amiyuri deadpanned, a sweat drop forming on the side of her head. Lucy gave a sheepish laugh. My bad. Alright, look Lucy. You're obviously not one to handle swords, so we can take everything dealing with a sword and almost everything that can be concerned with close range out of the picture. Bows and arrows are too technical. Plus you can't deal with much heavy things due to the lack of physical strength, even though Kisame could easily fix that, but you're the athletic type, speedy, agile, and probably has hand-eye coordination when it counts. Amayuri then surveyed the weapons room for a minute. Her eyes then widened as she saw what would be the perfect weapon for the celestial spirit user. Blondie, catch! Lucy yelped and her brain reacted as she snatched whatever was thrown at her out of the air upon it registering Ringo's command to catch the object. Lucy blinked when she looked at the chain that was now in her hand, but had somehow snaked its way around her hand and extended to the length of her forearm. She followed the chain's length to Amayuri's grinning face and then to her hand. The redhead was now holding a sickle-like weapon with a wooden handle to which the chain was attached. The chain, she noticed, had a weight attached to the end of it. "What is this?" Lucy asked. She was suddenly tugged by the chain and shifted off balance, and before she could even blink or scream, Amayuri had appeared in her sights, the side blade hovering beneath her frozen form, a mere inch away from her carotid artery. The weapon-using female gave a nod of approval as she looked at the weapon in her hands and Lucy. "Yes, this will do nicely," she commented. Lucy was then released from her sadistic sensei's weapon before being shown said weapon in its entirety up close. This is a kusarigama. It is basically a shortened scythe with a weighted chain attached to it. With the weighted chain, you can make wide sweeping arcs to keep opponents at a distance, or you can disarm them should they wield a handheld weapon. Also you can use it to immobilize them by wrapping the chain around their bodies. Once you use the chain for one of the two latter purposes, you can rush in closely with the side part and deal a fatal blow to them. Fatal? Closely? But I've never killed before in my entire life, and you said to rule out all possible uses of close-range weaponry, Lucy exclaimed. Listen here, Blondie, and I'm only going to say this once. I've heard of the Magic Council's law against killing, even against Dark Guild members, but you will have to kill one day. People like us, people who fight, people who can use weaponry, people who can magic, it makes no difference. You can't live your entire life without having had to kill. Lucy's eyes widened as she remembered what the Ogo no Fujin had told Urza. Her eyes dropped to the ground with a sad, frustrated look in her eyes. So he was right. She muttered quietly. There was a moment of silence before Amayuri led Lucy out of the weapons room, leaving the kusarigama behind. Lucy noticed that as soon as Amayuri closed the wall of the weapons room behind them, but instead she held a small wooden staff that looked to be about 3 feet long. Why didn't you take the kusarigama with you? Aren't you going to train me in using it? I will, however not everyone can just learn to use certain types of weaponry out of the blue. For the kusarigama, one must first become proficient in the use of a fighting style known as Shinto Muso Ryu Jodo forms, the style of fighting a swordsman using the jo, which is a short staff. This is in order for you to learn the forms that you will be required to use during the training of the kusarigama and make it easier for you to learn the omet and ura forms of kusarigama's own style, Ishin Ryu. Amayuri then utilized the jo with expert usage and then handed it to Lucy. Come, I will show you how to utilize jojutsu, the art of using this small staff. Once I have found you proficient enough in using it, I will grant you the use of the kusarigama and teach you in its various forms. Yes, Amayuri-sensei, Lucy said with determination burning in her brown orbs. The red-haired woman smirked. She was going to have a lot of fun with this one. Come on, Urza. Move your feet faster, strike harder. Use the strength I helped you to gain. Urza released a battle cry as she leapt at Kisame with her broadsword. Sparks flew as the metal clashed against the living sword of sharkskin. Samahata was swung in a downward diagonal slash, but Urza immediately went into a blocking position. Kisame spun on his heel and performed a horizontal slash before going into an upward strike. The force of said strike sending Urza skyward despite her attempts to stay grounded. Kisame-sensei's monstrous strength is still better than my own, it seems. After all, he did make me as physically strong as I am now. The armored fairy tale mage thought as she held off another upward strike Kisame aimed to use as the blades clashed once more. Urza then felt a little light-headed as she felt as if energy was leaving her. Her eyes widened as she remembered Samahata's abilities. Shit, so you remembered. Even though I used in on you just moments ago, your memory is getting shoddy, Urza-chan. Samahata can suck out the magic energy from any being as long as it makes contact with you. Even though armor protects you, the armor is laced with a bit of magic to make them stronger than they normally would be. The types of armors expected from Titania. Kisame grinned toothily before lashing out with a kick and nailing Urza in the stomach as he broken through her guard. Finally, he brought down Samahata in a downward slash, sending the blade in the female's hand spinning through the air. Urza gritted her teeth in pain as she was struck with great force. She felt Samahata use its shaving ability to make jagged gashes along her chest plating, and Sei was sent to the ground before Kisame fell after her. She landed on the ground in pain before looking up. Her eyes widened as she saw Kisame descend towards her, sword pointing downwards. She could have dodged it, she should have dodged, and she would have dodged it. But her body froze as her mind remembered the exact same position she was put in when fight engaged. That was the Ogo no Fujin. The ground rumbled slightly as Kisame had parted his legs so that he wouldn't have landed on Urza. Samahata was embedded near her skull before it was lazily rested against Kisami's shoulder. You spaced out there, Urza. Don't do that in a fight or you will die. Understand? Urza blinked and gulped whatever air she was holding captive in her mouth. She gave a tentative nod before being pulled to her feet by the blue-haired man. Now tell me, why did you flinch? I didn't flinch. Urza stated with a matter-of-fact tone, crossing her arms stubbornly, and Kisame gave a small smile as he saw the little preteen that had once been a chibi trying to hack away at a tree in an effort to teach herself swordsmanship. Listen, Urza-chan. His eyes sharpened dangerously, like shark that spotted prey. Anyone, especially you, Urza-chan, would have been able to dodge that downward stab. It was a simple requirement to just roll to the side or backwards roll, and you have been home free to counterattack to make room to call for another sword with your requip magic. So tell me, what's bothering you so badly? Urza sighed before using her telekinetic abilities to call over her blade she had previously lost. As it touched her hand, she resheathed it before sitting down on the grass, Kisame doing the same with Samahata slithering to the blue man's side. You know how I mentioned earlier about how I was defeated in combat recently? Kisame nodded. Yes, I do. A period of silence filled the space between the two as Kisame instantly put two and two together. Oh, I see. The position you were in came up and you froze, thinking I was the person who defeated you. Oh, Urza-chan. You really do have a lot to learn. You must learn to move past your defeats and strive forward. Strive forward? Kisame-sensei. The man nearly killed me, and I'm sure he would have if he wasn't so angry with how weak we seemed to be him. He took pity on my team and insulted Fairy Tail's beliefs. He took those beliefs and crushed them just like he crushed out bodies and spirits when he fought. I fought with the mentality of a proud Fairy Tail mage. I vowed to bring justice to those who kill. I believed that it is not right to kill any living being. I believed that the spirit of Fairy Tail was what kept mages in our guild strong and allowed us to keep fighting despite all odds. I did that. Urza's armor vanished in a flash of light along with her white blouse, leaving her in just a black lacy bra and her blue skirt and brown boots. Though Urza was practically half naked before a grown man like Kisame, the man knew his boundaries and he wasn't focusing on the fact that the attractive woman was simply in a bra and skirt. He was focusing on the large piece of scar tissue that lay on Urza's upper right arm and her stomach. The skin around the wounds was pale with black spots, showing that the wounds were most likely burnt before being cauterized shut. Who did this? Kisami's round eyes widened as he traced the scar on her stomach. I'm too afraid to utter his title and do not know his true name, Urza said, and then tears fell down her cheeks. She hugged her arms around herself. I was beaten, Kisame-sensei. I lost and my friends were injured and I could do nothing. He said not having the stomach to kill made me weak, and that my weakness came from being a part of Fairy Tail. Urza broke down and cried from her non-prosthetic eye into Kisami's chest, hugging the older man tightly. Kisame looked down at his student with a blank look on his face and stroked her hair in an effort to calm her. Despite her crying, Kisame spoke. Whoever this guy is, while I do despise him for hurting you, something I can never tolerate. While I do despise what he said to you to cause you to cry like this, I will speak my mind. Urza quieted down slightly so that she could hear the blue-skinned man speak. You are weak-willed, Urza. Despite all the strength you have, despite all the skills you possess, despite everything you've learned from myself and Amiyuri, you are very weak-willed. You lack the strength to carry out the final blow, to finish the job. But I've killed demons, slayed trolls. Urza was cut off by Kisami's gaze. You know what I mean. You're an S-class mage, so you've obviously had to deal with dark guilds, correct? Urza nodded. When it comes to human life, Urza. You are weak. You can't deal the final blow. You will never deal the final blow. Though, the Magic Council has deemed it illegal to have mages and rune knights kill, so I guess you can say the law alongside your beliefs held you back. But Urza-chan, there will come a time when you will face people so strong, so unbelievably powerful, you will have no choice but to slay them. Harden your heart, steel your will, and learn to bear crimson upon the silver blade, because it's obvious that the lives that people like us, people who wield weapons and can use magic, we can't live our entire lives without taking a life, Kisame said. Urza looked up in shock at what Kisame said. No. She clutched her head and shook her head. She looked to be having a mental breakdown. No, he said that too. He said almost exactly the same thing. Why do we have to kill? Why do we have to take away the gift of life simply because destiny decrees it? I may be a mage, but I don't want to kill. Not again. I've done that enough when I was in that tower. That tower was hell and I won't go back. I won't go back to that life. Never. Nope. Kisame slapped her across the face and she was silenced. Erza, snap out of it, Kisame roared as he shook her shoulders. Kisame sighed as he watched Urza look down at the grass with a solemn look on her face. Kisame looked at the sky and noticed that the deep blue had been encompassed by the fiery colors caused by the setting sun. Sighing, Kisame raised himself and Urza to their feet. "Put on your shirt and come inside. We're done for today." Urza followed behind Kisame as the slithering Samahata, only to see Kisame reach out into the brush and snatch up a rabbit that had aimed to flee. Kisame watched the brown-furred animal with an emotionless gaze, and Urza could only turn away as she heard a light snap of the rabbit's neck being broken. Death was a part of life, even if you had to deal it yourself. Urza Scarlet would learn this the hard way, whether she wanted to or not. Insert music. Fairy Tail Dark Guild, 1 month later. Frisia Town, Fiore Iwan Drayar, the master of the hidden dark guild known as Raventail, walked through the streets of the town as he observed the populace. "So, who can I choose from here that may be of use to me? Obviously I need someone with the ability to use magic, or at least someone who is combat-oriented." The son of Makarov thought as he scanned the crowd for someone who would appear to be useful to him. He watched down as a group of children raced past him, laughing and skipping as they played a game of tag. Iwan's eyes narrowed as he saw a head of blonde hair, and immediately the face of Laxus during his youth appeared before him, but as quick as he blinked, the face of Laxus disappeared and was replaced with the original face of a young 7-year-old boy. As the little boy raced past him, Iwan's mood began to regress from mere disappointment into outright frustration. Does no one in this town have the ability to use magic of any kind? 10% of the population is magic-oriented, and not even a decimal value of that 10% is located in Frisia Town. He growled. Useless, he spoke out loud and kicked a stone, sending it through the air. People watched the angry guild master with confused and odd looks before continuing to walk along the road, ignoring the man. Iwan was now seething as he continued to navigate the streets of Frisia, but he suddenly paused when he noticed that as he walked further and further down the road, the more quiet the air was. Raising his head, Iwan looked around to find himself in what he would assume would be the area that marked the low-class and low-class areas of the population. The form of social stratification that was dictated by the state of the buildings and the area itself was rather degrading in Iwan's opinion. Though he was, in the opinion of many, evil in a sense, he did have a sense of morality. In the past, Makarov used to tell him stories when he was a boy about how that he was not always the powerful mage he was now. The Titan of Fairy Tail was actually born in a rural area, and though he was gifted with the ability to use magic, he could never utilize it since he had to work on the small estate his parents, Iwan's grandparents, owned. Only when they had passed away did Makarov leave the place before being found by Purhito and thus introduced to Mavis and allowed entry into Fairy Tail. Humanity is a rather odd thing. We ask for equality and peace, and yet whenever one does not have the social standing or the finances to manage their own life, we immediately cast them out to the slums where they are forced into a lower standard of living as we stratify them from other members of society, be it by race, gender, caste. It doesn't matter. We are all born with a superiority complex somewhere inside us. Iwan thought as he looked at the sides of the road. The alleys were darkened and the streets were near barren, but the few people he spotted wore simple, but very dirty clothes. They were coughing, showing that the healthcare in this place was far from adequate. He then stopped when he spotted one of the larger buildings. The wooden building was about half the size of the clock tower located in Tully Village, which was a staggering 6-story tower, thus making this building 3 stories. However, despite its humongous size, the outward appearance could have used some work. The wood was shown to be broken in some areas of it. The white paint that covered it was now stained brown and black from the dust and grime in the atmosphere, and the sign that hung from it had 3 of its letters obscured or lost, be it by dust or the elements. ORPNGE is what the sign on the building read, but Iwan was a bright man and in a split second pieced together the word and found it to be orphanage. To have an orphanage of all places in this state was completely unsanitary for whoever lived within it. Iwan looked at the few stone steps that led to the orphanage's entrance before climbing the cracked stone. Showing common courtesy, he raised his fist to knock on the wooden door, which was actually one of the better pieces of the infrastructure. He then heard what sounded like someone singing on the other end of the door before it all went silent. However, it wasn't the song that made Iwan raise a curious eyebrow. It was the fact that he felt a magic signature in the building as he heard the song start. Iwan, having a slightly polite nature in him, knocked despite what he just heard. He waited 3 seconds before opening the door himself. The door swung inward, outwards by the perspective of whoever was inside the building. Iwan stepped inside before observing the area. The floor was tiled with black and white in a checkerboard pattern. The few windows that existed in the building were open, though a few of them were cracked, others completely shattered. He spotted a desk near a hallway which was probably for the manager of the orphanage, and the hallways led to the rooms of the children who stayed. He then rang the tiny silver bell at the desk. Iwan raised an eyebrow when the sound reverberated through the halls of the orphanage, but for some reason, no one came. Shrugging, the bearded man walked around the desk and headed down the hallway. Though as soon as he set foot within the dimly lit passage, the song he heard from the beginning when he was about to knock on the door met his ears. Due to actually being inside the building, the song was much louder, and within the confined hallway space, the sound bounced off the walls, echoing throughout it. Iwan was confused as he continued to hear the song. It was similar to that of a lullaby, though the lyrics confused him. Along the way, he paused to open a few doors. Strangely, all the children he found within the rooms were huddled in the corners, some crying, others rocking back and forth as if they had been traumatized, and some clutched their heads and muttered words to themselves. Iwan then decided to talk to one of the muttering children. A little boy, around 11 years old, with brown, disheveled hair and was shaking uncontrollably. The Dark Guild Master gave a curious look at the young boy before dropping down to one knee. He then raised his hand to touch the boy, but immediately recoiled when the boy's head snapped up, revealing insane, frightened green eyes. "No, please, don't take me into the room. Don't you hear the song? Once they play the song, it means something bad will happen to you. The red-haired girl, she sings it, and then she killed that lady. I don't want to die." The boy rocked back and forth only to flinch as Iwan rested his hand on his shoulder. "Listen to me, son. I need you to tell me where this red-haired girl is. I can help, I'm a mage." He proved this to the boy by making a paper shikigami come to life and walk around the room. The boy's eyes widened before nodding and pointing down the hallway, or in his case, at the wall. She's at the end of the hallway where the white room is." The boy answered. Iwan nodded before rising to his feet. "You've served your purpose then, son. Would you like freedom?" The boy sprang up to his feet and nodded vigorously. "You can get me out of here?" Iwan nodded before resting his hand on the boy's head. "Oh yes, I can. Let me show you how." The boy suddenly froze and he looked up in fear, meeting Iwan's dark gaze. The man had a wide grin on his face. Iwan then turned around and chuckled before humming the tune that was echoing through the halls. However, the newest change to his appearance was that in his hand was a little shikigami. "See, I told you I'd let you out, son." Iwan chuckled as he waved the shikigami around before biting its head off and then shredding the shikigami's body, his laughter growing louder as he walked down the hall. After he shredded the shikigami, Iwan stopped at the end of the hallway where the lullaby he was hearing seemed to be coming from. The sound was muffled a bit, however, due to the door being in the way, yet the crack in the door was what allowed the sound to escape the room and spread throughout the orphanage building. Iwan then opened the door and looked to see the white room around him. Everything was padded for some reason and perfectly white, as if the place was constantly cleaned of any speck of dirt, dust and other members of filth. At least, that's what it would have been like if the numerous areas of the room weren't stained in crimson. In the center of the room, standing straight up like a soldier, was the little red-haired girl that the boy Iwan had just killed was talking about. Her back was facing him so Iwan couldn't see her face, but from her height she looked to be about 11 years old. She had long, flowing, red-orange colored hair and wore a red dress that reached just below her knees. She wore no shoes so her feet were bare. She had an even skin tone, but it seemed as if she had a tint of pale to her, most likely due to the confinement and lack of actual sunlight. Not much can be done for the skin with just a fluorescent light bulb, the Raventail master thought. She was most likely quarantined from the other children if the straight jacket that was tossed aside was any indication. He then listened intently as he watched the girl continue to sing, her head nodding side to side as she did so. Iwan's eyes widened as he felt the magic signature he had felt earlier radiate from the girl before him. He smirked to himself. "Well then. Seems I've found my next member. Warusa baka ni no Yudopeka. Kyomon anake moriburo dirake okoda yudo godo." Iwan then looked at her hair once more and noticed how it curved around her body. Two long separate locks of it moved a rued to hang in front of her chest. The girl giggled as she continued to sing. "Kuchabashi wo doku ni kata komata Yudopeka su ana ga doku ni. Gohan mo doku ni." Iwan's eyes widened as he realized that the magic power from the girl suddenly flowed into her hair. Her hair suddenly seemed to take a life of its own and reared up, splitting apart into 6 parts. He then watched as the magic in the girl followed whatever command it was given and suddenly morphed in shape, taking the form of woodpeckers, their sharpened beaks poised to strike whatever was in front of the girl. "Tomodachi ni furiba shinubakari kanashinda Yudopeka. Doku no namita ga kira kira hikaru." The girl then allowed the 2 locks that were in front of her chest to rise, and it revealed a young blonde woman with deep, chocolate brown eyes and voluptuous figure. However, she had her arms and legs bound by the hair as well as her mouth, so her screams were nothing more than inaudible. Her eyes widened as she looked at the woodpeckers of pure hair and then spotted Iwan. She gave him a pleading look, but her eyes widened as she saw his face break out into a mad grin. "Kill her," he whispered. As he said that, the little redhead laughed before tilting her head. "Bye-bye, blondie." The woodpeckers of hair then stabbed forth and impaled the blonde woman through her skull, neck, stomach, heart, left leg, and one went through her lower side. If one were to take a look internally, her brain and skull were practically ruined. Her heart was split perfectly in half. Her stomach was more or less just a lump of flesh within her. Her femur was broken through and her liver was completely removed from her body. All the woodpecker beaks had moved through and through, so the room was now splattered with blood. Organs and flesh were slammed into the white walls of the room, staining them even more with the red fluid of life. The little girl laughed before she paused as Iwan clapped. Turning around, the little 11-year-old spotted Iwan, revealing her manic grin, the bruises that were on her face and the look of pure, utter insanity that filled her crimson eyes.
Ooh, you seem happy, mister. She spoke with an innocent voice, but anyone with a brain could tell that her innocent tone was laced with malicious intent. Do you like what I did to Blondie?
Oh, I am very impressed. Oh, but what's this? You seem to have been bruised. Who did this to you? The black-haired man asked. The little girl frowned at that before glaring at the body of the blonde woman she just killed before tossing it aside with her hair as it returned to its regular form. Her hair then retracted to its usual length, leaving it at one that extended past her waist, but not so much that it extended to the floor. Blondie did this to me when I was here. She said I couldn't use magic and show off to the other kids, and she said she'd punish me if I did. I think I was 10 when I got my first punishment. I was so afraid. Oh, so afraid of the punishment she said she would deal me. But since I realized that I can use my wonderful hair like this, it obeying my every command and shaping itself to my very thoughts. She petted the locks of crimson like they were a puppy or a cat. I decided to take my revenge on Blondie. Oh, poor little Blondie. Turning your little woodpecker into a poisoned blade. The little girl giggled before clapping her hands. As quickly as she had become euphoric, the smiles and laughs disappeared as she glared back at Iwan. And now, I think I'm going to kill you too, mister. Now I don't think that is something you would want to do, little girl. I'm an experienced mage while you are merely a novice. However, I have a proposition, a deal if you will. I will teach you to become a master of your magic if you join me in my guild. Join Raventail, my friend, and I shall give the power to kill all who will wrong you. The 11-year-old redhead grinned at the prospect of becoming powerful and getting to kill without restraint, but what's in it for you? I doubt you would just walk in here and want me simply to make me strong. You caught on that quick? I'm 11, I'm not stupid. The little girl glared. Iwan nodded.
Granted that you do interest me due to your abilities, but you see my guild is rather new, you see, and I require infantry. I require soldiers, and powerful soldiers at that. Your powers can make you a very powerful ally for me, and as a further positive to this, I get to see your lovely red hair every day. Iwan lied in that last part, but who needs the truth when you speak to a maniacal sadist? The little girl blushed a bit at that compliment before grinning.
So, if I join you I get to kill things and get stronger, right? Of course, my dear. Without restraint, though should you need to go into public areas I ask that if I tell you not to kill, you will not kill. Iwan released a burst of magic energy laced with killing intent, forcing the girl to her knees as her eyes widened with fear towards the man. Iwan then loomed over her and cupped her face. You will obey me or you will face consequences for your actions, my dear. Understood? The little girl nodded rapidly and released the breath she had been unconsciously holding. Now, if I may be so bold as to ask the name of the newest member to Raventail. What's your name, little girl? Iwan asked in his previously fatherly tone. The little girl rose to her feet and wiped her dress. Flare Corona. 1 month later, Grassy Plains, Western Region, Fury. 2 months in total had passed since Urza and Lucy had come to seek guidance and teachings from Urza's former, now current, teachers. Kisame Hoshigaki and Amayuri Ringo. They were brutal in whatever they had to teach their pupils, but the results they had yielded from their methods had proved fruitful. Due to Amayuri's strict and lengthy teachings, Lucy had become exceedingly proficient within the katas for Jojutsu as the end of the first month had arrived and was now learning how to go through the omit stances for the kusarigama usage, and she was progressing quite well. She had also been taught a bit in the art of hand-to-hand combat since Amayuri had made it quite clear that fists and feet are considered weapons too, as she so painfully demonstrated to the blonde heir of Heartfilia. Urza, while still not willing to kill just yet, she had progressed greatly. Her ability to utilize her swords and various other forms of weaponry that she kept on her person via requip had increased by leaps and bounds. Give her probably by the end of this year and she could call herself a true master of weapons. Amayuri has commented. Kisame had improved upon Urza's strength, speed and sword technique, while Amayuri focused on flexibility, dexterity and aiding Urza in better utilizing the other various forms of weaponry she had access to. Currently, Amayuri and Lucy were training in the practical use of the kusarigama. Hyaa. Lucy gave a cry of effort as she flung the chain of the kusarigama at her red-haired mentor. Amayuri cartwheeled out of the way of the chain, but Lucy spun it around to allow it to gain momentum in order to reverse its direction, moving it in a wide sweeping arc. Amayuri simply stepped aside before ducking under the chain's weight when the busty brown-eyed girl aimed to strike her skull with it. Headshot. Nice touch. Amayuri gave a thumbs up as she ducked and jumped over the chain once more. Amayuri then drew one of the kiba before charging it with electricity. Lucy immediately retracted the metal chain. She then shifted her legs so that they were equidistant and parallel to her shoulders, and she twisted her body at the hips as the chain spun above her head. Lucy leapt to the side and landed in the same position she had previously made as the kiba was stabbed into the ground, causing a small explosion of dirt and lightning. Seeing her chance, Lucy let the chain fly with perfect accuracy, and Ringo was forced to raise her blade in a desperate attempt to prevent her neck from being hit by the weighted end of the chain. But the chain held in her sword and she now stood with her upper body bound. "Well done, Lucy-chan. You've finally succeeded performing something stupid." Lucy's victorious smirk at having finally been able to catch her teacher with the chain dropped as she watched the kiba in her sensei's hand and her eyes widened. "Oh crap," was all she said as blue lightning arced along the chain's length faster than she could blink, and her body became rigid as the electrical charge coursed through her. Smoke rose from her body when the lightning died down, and with her grip on the chain being lost, it fell slack and Amayuri climbed out of the chains before walking up to the downed blonde. "Hey, don't be so down, kiddo. At least you were able to hold me for more than half a second this time." "Oh, and increasing that time limit to 2 seconds is such a marked improvement," Lucy groaned with a sarcastic tone. "In my book, yes." Amayuri grinned toothily. "Now get up, Kisame and Urza-chan are inside, and Urza-chan says she's finally ready to talk about that guy you two had been beaten by 2 months ago. The one who broke your bodies and spirits." "You're way too blunt, Ringo-sensei," Lucy commented. "And you're too whiny, but you don't see me bitchin' about it." The two females entered the house, where they found Kisame and Urza yelling and fighting one another for the last of many pieces of fish they were eating. "It's mine, bitch," Kisame yelled. "As if sensei, I caught the damn thing. It's mine," Urza yelled right back. "The fish is mine, Samahata sick, The giant sword of living sharkskin that feasted upon magic energy watched its wielder and said wielder's student with non-existent eyes. "GGGGG. What do you mean I've already lost? Are you insane? I have a..." Kisame turned back to the fish he was fighting for, only to realize his fork was scraping against solid plate instead of the fish he currently warring over. He looked up in horror at the satisfied Urza munching happily on the fillet of fish before giving a very unfeminine belch of victory. "How did you? When did you?" The question stuck in Kisame's throat as he watched the smug look on the redhead's face. "Alright you two, no fighting. Urza-chan. You had something you wanted to tell me and Kisame?" Amayuri asked. Urza gulped the fish down before nodding as she led the two owners of the house into the living room. Lucy followed behind them before taking her place on the second couch as Kisame and Amayuri occupied the first one. "Well, Kisame-sensei. Ringo-sensei, as you both know, 2 months ago Lucy and I had been traumatized by a man who attacked my team and myself while on a mission request. Due to not being mentally or emotionally prepared, we have been reluctant to talk about the identity of our attacker. Though given from your description, Lucy, you were not harmed in any way. Though the mental and emotional trauma would have been great, I don't really see what the point is in using the possessive word. Ringo mused. Urza gave an annoyed look to the redhead while Lucy sunk into the couch cushions as if trying to become as small as possible and trying, and failing, to become invisible as she hid her face in her hands. "Point noted, but if I may continue." Amayuri laid back against the couch cushions as gestured for her fellow redhead to continue. "Now then, I have showed you both the scars I was given due to my battle with him. One from a vertical slash wound to the upper right arm and one from a deep stab wound to the stomach. Both of my wounds had been cauterized immediately upon being formed. Your opponent must have been using fire-coated swords then, if the wounds were immediately burned closed. They must have also been some pretty strong blades, because that armor you wore, Heaven Wheel armor, is one that is quite tough despite it covering so little. Why do you do that anyway?" Kisame asked. "What's the point of wearing armor when it covers little of your body?" "Ringo-sensei said I would be able to distract men with my amazing armors if I left skin open," Urza said with an innocent tilt of the head. "So this is all your fault? Damned woman. Look what you did. She looks like she's freaking trying to seduce the people she fights with how much cleavage and skin she exposes." Kisame's mouth was immediately shut by the electricity coursing through his body as Amayuri stabbed the 2 kiba blades into the man's chest. Kisame was now comically laying on the ground, eyes wide and smoke ejecting from his mouth and body. "Continue, Urza-chan." Urza and Lucy sweat dropped at the scene before Urza continued. "Yes, the one who attacked us and put me into such a state was..." Urza took a deep breath before releasing a shaky exhale. "The Ogo no Fujin and the Onidi Myobo." "What?" Kisame's fallen body immediately recovered and void of any wounds. Lucy gasped in shock. "You're up already," she exclaimed. Amayuri and Kisame ignored the blonde as they looked at Urza and Lucy. "You're telling us that the most wanted man and beast in all of Fury had attacked you both?" A pair of nods was their response. "And you didn't try to run, at all?" "I suggested that, but Urza said she couldn't let someone who killed to go unpunished." Urza looked down at the floor as her two senseis watched her with neutral gazes. "Urza-chan." The two sighed. "We raised you to have principles and your master certainly did the same, but know that your life holds more weight than principles and morals. That was a very stupid thing of you to do. Both of them have a wanted poster, are labeled SS class and flee on sight." Equals, and you choose to stay and fight them for the sole purpose of not wanting him to get away with killing and shedding blood. You could have been one of the dead Urza, Amiri said. You told us that he grew bored and frustrated with your morals, and so he broke your spirits rather than killed you. He is a smart man for doing such a thing to an enemy, and you are stupid for having not run away. Running away doesn't mark cowardice, Urza, if it means allowing your nakama to survive. Your nakama were there with you, weren't they? Lucy-chan was there. They were put in harm's way because of your selfish actions. Kisame paused as his round eyes watched Urza with a look of realization. He's the one who crushed your views on killing, isn't he? Yes. Kisame and Amiyuri gave another sigh of frustration at the young woman before them. Well, you will get over that once you have finished your training. But Ringo-sensei, Kisame-sensei, I don't want to take a life, not again. Again? Lucy thought with a questioning look on her face. Sometimes it was a pro to have the ability to fade into the background. Look, we'll discuss your views of killing later. Right now, one thing confuses me, Kisame said.
What's that, sensei? Urza asked. Those wounds, they were caused by a much more powerful fire. I've seen a lot of powerful blades, I've seen ones that could conjure up flames, and I've seen a mixture of both, but none have been able to immediately cauterize wounds upon being formed. What weapons did the Ogano Fujin use on you? It was obviously a sword, but what kind of sword? Urza sighed as if she were expecting that question. He struck me down with two of the most powerful swords known to man. He struck me down with Excalibur and Ascalon. The resulting silence was deafening to Urza and Lucy as both saw the shocked looks on the weapon masters' faces. Urza, please. Tell me you're joking. I know it was stated that Kushina Uzumaki of the 10 Wizard Saints was struck down 20 years ago, but they said the two sacred swords she had, they were never recovered. Hell, her own body, along with Minato Namikaze's, they were never found. What purpose would joking serve me, Ringo-sensei? Urza asked rhetorically. Amiyuri bit her lip and Kisame frowned deeply. They then looked at each other for a long time, no words passing between them, as if they were having a telepathic conversation. Both of them then hardened their gazes before nodding to a Neto gain victory against the Ogano Fujin when you face him once more, correct? Amiri asked. I would be lying if I said I didn't want a chance to make the Fujin fall before me, she answered. Urza, the only way to fend off and defeat a sacred blade of Merlin is with another sacred blade of Merlin. These blades are to be almost sentient as they choose their own wielders. Are you sure you are ready for this? Amiri and I have done it once before, but the guardian of the blade is quite powerful, along with the fact that when we got even close to the blade and laid our hands on its hilt, it rejected us. The sword will only accept someone who is powerful in its opinion and someone who bears a heart of courage. Kisame spoke this time. I will. I believe I am ready to take on the task of retrieving the third sword of Merlin. I will retrieve Caliburn, Urza said, her eyes reflecting her iron will. After having walked a stretch of landscape, at least 20 miles of flat grassland from the house, over 2 hills, the group of 4 had arrived at the river that flowed from the mountains of the north. Kisame had taken the lead as he and Samahata swam along the river's currents, following the meandering path of blue before they descended down a relatively steep slope before coming to a stop at the edge of a great lake. The lake was about 5 times as large as the giant demon that Urza had fought during her S-class mission, the one whose horn she had brought back to the guild when she first met Lucy. Looking down at the surface, Urza saw the water was extremely clear, but after a few feet it began to grow dark and she lost herself. Snapping out of her stupor, she looked to see Kisame climbing out of the water with Samahata. This is where Caliburn lies. At the very bottom of the lake there is a guardian that plays numerous roles. It grants protection for both the lake, claiming it as its own territory, and Caliburn. It is the leader of the numerous creatures that live in this lake, many of which are not afraid to kill you. So Urza, this is where you must harden your heart. Steel yourself so that you can kill the monsters below there, because they will not hesitate to end your life. The guardian is very powerful. Amiyuri and I were both lucky to have escaped with our lives. But shouldn't Samahata's fused form have granted you better abilities in the water? Shouldn't you have been able to beat the guardian even if you couldn't get Caliburn? How do you think I got out? Kisame asked rhetorically. Besides, Urza, there is almost no way to beat that monster. It's fast, strong, agile, and it is built for underwater combat. Do not underestimate it or you will die. Your best chance is go straight through the ranks of the lake monsters. Try to avoid the guardian as best as you could and then aim for Caliburn and hope you can pull it out. Otherwise, you're pretty much dead. Stay alert, everything comes from all directions. Keep up your guard up, and it'd be best you put on an armor to endure the pressure and allows you to breathe underwater. Wait, Ringo-sensei? Lucy spoke. The 3 turned to look at the questioning blonde. How did you do this? I mean, you can't breathe underwater nor can your body withstand such great amounts of pressure. Kisame-sensei has Samahata, and from the abilities it has I can guess it protects him better when in water. But what do you have? Amiyuri chuckled at that. That's a good question, Lucy-chan. The answer to that though is the new armor I gave Urza just now. I can't thank you enough for giving me it, sensei.
Urza bowed before she looked at Lucy, who was a bit nervous at seeing her friend going to dive into the bowels of the deep to confront a monstrous beast that could defeat even their own senseis who were strong in their own right. "Don't worry, Lucy. I'll be fine. I'm a fairy tale mage after all." Lucy nodded as her nervousness was eased by the confident look on the redhead's face. Urza then looked down at the surface of the water before leaping high into the air, directly over the surface of the lake. Requip. She was then enveloped in a golden light as her newest armor was attached to her body. The light died down to reveal the armor was completely golden in color. It was a slightly bulky due to the numerous amounts of golden plates that made up its design. Intricate golden patterns decorated its surface. Attached to the underside of her forearms were fins similar to that of a shark's, making a crescent shape, and they were rather sharp, so they doubled as blades. The same type of fins curved upwards from her calf area. A helmet made of the same material was worn atop her head, which framed her face and kept her hair tucked within its confines so that it wouldn't get in the way. On the back of the armor were a set of slits, similar to fish gills. The final addition to the armor was the weapon she was granted with it. In her hands was a 6-foot-long trident. Atlantean armor. Urza then gave a nod to Amayuri, who nodded in return before a blue visor came down over Urza's bare face. She then positioned her body and dove down into the waters with a splash. "Atlantean armor?" Lucy asked as she watched the tower of water formed from Urza's splash die down. Amayuri nodded. "Yup. It was said to be an armor developed by a civilization that is long dead and lost to the world, even going so far as to have it degenerate into mere myth. The armor is crafted from some of the hardest metals found within the stones of the ocean rock. Due to the stability of the metal's molecules, said molecules being held together by some of the strongest covalent bonds ever found in an element, it has a very high melting point, can withstand high pressures of over 15,000 psi, and is so durable and hard it makes diamond look like glass."
The slits on the back of the armor are designed to automatically absorb water from the surroundings upon entering the body of water, and it will break down the water, removing the hydrogen ions and feeding only the remaining gaseous oxygen to the wearer. It also grants the user hydrokinesis, so you may be able to manipulate water to an extremely high degree. Plus you gain augmented strength and speed underwater. Amayuri added.
"So it's the ultimate underwater combat armor?" "Exactly that. Though because it required only for underwater combat, I never had much use for it, and so after that one time I tried to get Caliburn, I hung it up, and now that Urza wants the sword, I'm giving it to her." "Gotta say, Amayuri, you got one hell of a super armor. You pretty much made her a god under the water." "Tell that to the Guardian," she replied to Kisami's joke. Lake of Amphileon. Urza sank deeper and deeper into the lake water, and she realized just how deep it was. As she began to reach the darker areas of the water, her vision also began to disappear. However, she heard a few words coming from the armor, and her eyes widened as neon green light flooded her vision. When she opened her eyes, she gasped as she saw she was able to see through the darkness of the deep waters, albeit everything was green, but she could see nonetheless. "It has night vision capabilities too," she exclaimed as she continued to sink downwards. This was the coolest armor she had ever. Too bad it only works well underwater though, she thought. As she continued to sink, she could only marvel at how amazing the armor she wore was. However, she paused as the hearing mechanisms allowed her to hear the growls and snarls of whatever it was that was below her. She stopped sinking as she started to kick her feet. Looking down, her eyes narrowed as she saw numerous pairs of green dots meet her sight. She watched as numerous giant sharks, moray eels and anglerfish spotted her form. Octopi and squid also followed behind. The numerous aquatic organisms circled her as they reached her level. She eyed them carefully, gripping the trident in her hand tightly. Suddenly, 3 sharks and 2 moray eels attacked her and bit into her armor. Urza stood still as she didn't expect the creatures. Her eyes widened when she saw the creatures stare at her with hungry looks as they tried to chew through the tough metal of her armor. She smirked as she noticed how durable it was before she remembered the abilities of her armor from Ringo Sensei.
Insert music. Fairy tale Shishi no Hoshi. She closed her eyes and focused on the water around her. She took a deep breath, inhaling the displaced oxygen from the broken down water molecules. Her eyes then snapped open as she imagined the water swirling around her. A miniature whirlpool then swept up the 3 sharks and 2 eels that were attacking her before Urza held up her hand. "Harden my heart," she muttered to herself as she remembered the words of Samahata's wielder. She sighed, and with a cringe of regret, she moved the whirlpool above her and then clenched her hand into a fist. The whirlpool immediately shrunk, morphing into a globe before it seemed to implode inwards. Nothing was left except for the cloud of red blood that was left behind. As the creatures above her had been killed, she shuddered as old memories sprung up. Her young body wielding a sword and killing the guards of the Tower of Heaven, striking them down with no remorse, her only feeling to just escape the dreaded hellhole. This time, her only feeling was the feeling to reclaim victory from the hands of her mortal enemy who beat her at her own game of swordplay. The sword of Merlin, Caliburn, was her objective.
She raised her legs as she watched the suddenly army of fish and other forms of aquatic life speed watch her and waited for her movement. Tucking her legs inwards, she pointed her trident down at the battalion. "You're in the way." With that simple phrase, she kicked off. A loud boom formed as a shockwave of water was all that remained of Urza's form. She sped down towards the sharks, eels, octopi and whatnot, trident held at the ready. The aquatic population struck out as she neared them and she smirked before twirling the trident with expert skill before stabbing it into the head of a shark. She then used the trident as a means to vault over it before wrenching it from the shark's skull and spun in a circle, cutting through whatever was around her and more as a pulse of water slammed into the organisms, crushing their bodies with the amount of force they were hit with. She then pelted the trident downwards, the weapon impaling through numerous attackers as she decided to go into a melee frenzy. She grabbed one shark by its powerful jaws and ripped them apart before spinning and punching an octopus in the head, crushing the rock-hard skull. She then grabbed the cephalopod's tentacles and swung it around and slammed it into a giant eel. She lashed out with a back kick, nailing a squid in the eye and then grabbing two sharks that aimed to double-team her, one with each arm. She crashed both sharks against each other before speeding towards an eel whose mouth was open wide. She bent her forearm, the shark fin blade shining despite the lack of light in the deep lake. Her blade sliced the eel in half as she continued to swim past it, the blade cutting through it like a hot knife through butter. A squid wrapped its tentacles around her arms and legs to bind her, but her hydrokinesis allowed her to manipulate the water and she kicked at the squid, sending a spear of water through its beak and out of its head, blood and ink clouding its form. She then held out her hand. As she continued to beat the fish's back with only her legs and her left arm, she felt something solid in her outstretched hand and looked to see the trident had returned to her. She spun the trident and impaled it through the shark's jaws before tearing it apart. She then rotated the trident and sent a whirlpool at a numerous amount of the aquatic battalion's members. A boom followed as she sped through the army of underwater fauna, impaling and slicing them with her arm and leg blades or the trident. She then raised her trident and the water seemed to accumulate around the center prong in the form of a giant stream of water that swirled with power. Ultramarine. She gave a cry of effort as she swung her trident. A giant stream of water flew forth and swept up numerous amounts of her attackers, streams of red showing they had been crushed by the force with which the serpentine-like stream of water hit them with. As the attack ended, Urza stood proudly with her trident, blood and dead animals surrounding her. She then continued her descent to the bottom of the lake, swimming swiftly as she continued to slice through whatever organism survived her ultramarine attack. The neon green environment of the night vision her Atlantean armor granted her the ability to avoid any and all obstacles that came her way, and after what seemed like hours of swimming, she reached the bottom of the exceedingly deep lake. Urza floated a few inches off the bottom of the lake, her eyes scanning the area. The Titania of Fairy Tail looked around for anything resembling the sword of Merlin. Or at least a sword, because she had no idea what the thing looked like. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden Blind Animal. As she continued to scan the area, she had not noticed the faint blue glow behind her and the shadows of the deep moving around. She paused as she caught a glance of something shining through her night vision. She immediately swam towards it and smirked when she saw the image of a sword, impaled in what looked like an anvil, which was further embedded in a boulder that had moss growing on its surface. Urza glanced at the hilt of the blade as she watched over it, still unaware of the shadows moving towards her. The faint blue glow growing brighter as it neared her. She tilted her head as she noticed writing on the side of the anvil and a single word etched into the hilt of the sword. Caliburn was etched into the hilt. "Whosoever pulls this sword from the anvil, thou shalt be granted the title and powers of king," was what was written onto the side of the black anvil, its words glowing a shining emerald color due to Urza's armor's night vision aspect. She raised an eyebrow at that before her eyes widened as the ground beneath her began to rumble. The crimson-haired mage was forced to leap away from Caliburn as the earth broke apart in front of the blade. The shockwave that resulted sent her careening through the waters before she came to a stop a few feet away. Her eyes widened as she saw the dust cloud that formed begin to subside. In front of her was a large dark blue, bordering on black, serpent of some sort.
Its body was long and draconian in nature. Its body was completely black, but plated with numerous armor-like scales. Patterns of a shining cerulean blue shone through the darkness, so bright that they were shown to be blue even through the green of Urza's night vision. Its eyes were a similar blue color and sharp spikes and spines trailed down its back with two large wings that were actually fins. A pair of arms stretched from its visible midsection.
This was the guardian of the lake and protector of Caliburn, the mighty sea serpent, Amphileon. She clutched the trident in her hand as the serpent leered at her, its sharp teeth baring at her. Amphileon then took a deep breath and roared loudly, sending a large shockwave of water sent her flying backwards. However, she came to a stop as she hit something solid. She winced as the force of the impact had hurt her slightly, but she then felt something on her armor. Her eyes widened as she looked up as there lay a second head. Or the head that was attached to the location of where the tail of Amphileon would be. What kind of beast is this? Urza thought as the two heads of Amphileon growled before diving down at her. A large smoke cloud was formed as the two heads smashed into the ground. The two heads shook from side to side to get rid of the dust before looking around for their prey. Urza hovered above her attacker and watched the twin-headed serpent look for her. She raised her trident upwards and water swirled to life as it accumulated into the powerful water vortex. ULD as she sent the swirling stream of water at the beast. Amphileon looked up as the vortex as it neared it before it down beneath the earth of the lake bed. The earth cracked and split apart slightly from the force, but Amphileon had dodged the strike before emerging from the depths and opened its jaws to swallow Urza. The scarlet-haired woman swung her trident and sent an arc of water at the beast, but Amphileon merely charged through it and Urza was forced to use her enhanced strength to catch the jaws of the beast, struggling to hold them open and keep them from crushing her. No, I've come much too far to die like this. Urza's eyes blazed with fury and determination before she activated her hydrokinesis that came with the Atlantean armor and a ball of water slammed into the front head of Amphileon. The impact caused it to roar in pain as the eyeball was struck, but as she swam out of the creature's jaws, its rear head had decided to strike as well. Urza swerved around it before swimming towards its skull and drove her trident forth. Bubbles marked the speed of the trident as Urza stabbed Amphileon, but a great deal of resistance met her and she watched in amazement as the sharp trident made of the same material as her armor hadn't even pierced through the sea serpent's hide. Not even a dent was made. What? She was then tossed off of the beast's head before the front head raised the arms on its side of the body and slammed them down on Urza. The armored woman sped towards the lake bed and met it with a harsh crash. She had quickly recovered however, her armor doing a damn good job of protecting her. She shook her head as the night vision allowed her to see Amphileon with ease and saw the beast had its rear head facing her as it dove down. The rear head then opened its jaws before a stream of pressurized water shot forth when said liquid had accumulated in its jaws. Urza's eyes widened before she conjured up a large whirlpool to block the strike. There was a lot of force behind the attack and Urza was almost about to lose control of her whirlpool, but managed to hold it long enough for the water blast to subside. She then swung her trident and sent an ultramarine attack at her opponent. The stream of water slammed into Amphileon and this time it scored a hit and the attack had packed enough momentum into it to send Amphileon flying backwards through the water. Urza then took the chance to swim towards Caliburn and tried to draw the blade. However, just as she was a few feet from it, Amphileon fired a high-speed water blast and stopped her in her tracks before a clawed limb slammed down from the frontal head's side. She was then picked up and slammed downwards multiple times before being thrown away from the sword. A blast of water from the rear head followed after and sent her rocketing at high speeds. Her eyes widened as she began to hear and feel the pressure of the water blast make her armor creak. This beast is powerful. I need to get that sword, it's my only chance. She mentally shouted before speeding off. Amphileon met her halfway and aimed to bite her, but she avoided it only for the rear head to aim a slash at her. She quickly deflected it with her trident before sending a water arc at its jaws to stop it from biting her. A backward tumble made her avoid the headbutt from the frontal head and she then called upon a large wave of water to push the beast back and the water blast from both heads were misdirected. The frontal head's blast heading upwards while the rear head's attack had impacted with one of the many boulders that lay on the lake bed. The red head quickly sped forth and spun rapidly, looking like a golden drill, her trident pointing forward. An ultramarine current formed around her and she moved around the serpent's attempts to stop her strike, but she curved around them all as if she were a serpent herself before going towards the frontal head's body. Neptune's vortex, she roared and as her trident made contact with Amphileon, a titanic vortex of water erupted from the point of contact and sent Amphileon soaring through the water, through numerous boulders and then it continued to skid along the black earth. Urza panted as the attack had taken a large amount of her remaining magic energy. She couldn't afford to float around so she sped off towards Caliburn with everything she had. She stabbed her trident into the ground near the boulder before gripping Caliburn's hilt. She caught her breathing and allowed her heart rate to slow a bit. She looked back to check for Amphileon and saw it was still recovering from her strike. She then tugged on the hilt. Her eyes widened when she realized the blade didn't budge, refusing to obey her actions. No, please, Urza thought as she continued to pull on the blade. She gave it everything she had, pulling tightly on the platinum blade's hilt. She tugged harder and harder, but to no avail. The roar of Amphileon met her ears as she continued to pull. She looked back briefly and her brown eyes widened as she saw the sea serpent had recovered and was now racing towards her with unbelievable speeds. She had mere second and she didn't know if she had enough magic power to fuel another Neptune's vortex, let alone another ultramarine. No, I've come too far. She tugged as the roar of Amphileon met her ears once more. I've trained too hard to fall. I put all my blood, sweat and tears to become strong. I am strong enough to wield you, Caliburn. I need your power to beat him. I need to beat that blonde bastard. Just come out. Just come out, she yelled as she pulled. She panted as she floated in the waters of the lake. Amphileon was now right behind her. Jaws opened wide. Her eyes were closed as if she were accepting her demise. Time slowed down for her as the shadows of the might beast's jaws closed on her. All I need is the power to be able to protect my comrades. So long as I can have the strength to do that. I don't care if I'm weaker than everyone in the world. Urza's eyes snapped open as she gripped Caliburn's hilt that much tighter. I will live. The jaws of Amphileon snapped shut and encompassed both the holding of Caliburn and Urza Scarlet. The blue-eyed serpent gave a growl of satisfaction as it swallowed.
However, the frontal head suddenly froze and its eyes widened as a circle of platinum flames suddenly burst forth in a circle, the frontal head falling to the lake bed, blood billowing out like a storm cloud as Urza emerged from the opening she had just created. In her Atlantean armored hand, she held the platinum blade, encompassed by platinum flames causing bubbles and steam to rise from it. Urza then turned and looked at the rear head of Amphileon as it growled at her.
It eyed the flaming sword in her hand, but it still remained defiant. With a roar, it charged forth and aimed to slash at her. Urza's eyes watched the beast's movements and she avoided the slash before spinning and bringing the blade down in a downward slash. The sword that had the ability to cut through dragon scales, cut through Amphileon's own hard scales and cut off the clawed forehand of Amphileon's rear head body. The beast roared and aimed another slash only for Urza to swim above it and aim a blast of platinum flames at it and burned it to charcoal. With both limbs useless and its frontal head now gone, the only form of weaponry was the rear head's teeth and its water blast. It roared and sent a shockwave at Urza who sent flying back from the force of it and the water blast accompanied it. Urza's eyes widened as she saw the powerful attack near her and she raised the blade of Merlin to block it. Her eyes widened even further as she watched Caliburn block the attack with ease, turning it to steam as soon as the waters came into contact with the flames. She smirked as the attack died down and Amphileon was in shock as it stared at the red-haired woman. I am Urza Scarlet, Titania of Fairy Tale. And I now wield the blade of Merlin. She thrusted the sword upwards and flames exploded outwards from the blade in a mighty burst. I wield Calibur. She then sped off towards Amphileon and the magic power she gave off as she neared the sea serpent was enough for the mighty beast to flinch with fear. A bright arc of platinum crossed the blue-eyed beast's vision and that was that it saw before the entire body of Amphileon was encompassed in platinum flames. The body spasmed and roared in pain as it was burned and all that was left was mere ash and Urza then swam down to the bottom of the lake bed and smiled with pride as she watched the remnants of Amphileon. She then withdrew the trident for the Atlantean armor before walking over the bodiless head of Amphileon's frontal head. Souvenir. She laughed lightly as she attached the trident to her back and clutched Caliburn tightly in her left hand. She used her right hand to pick up the head of Amphileon and began to make her way to the surface. Grassy Plains, Western Region, Fury. She's been down there for so long. Are you sure you shouldn't check on her? Lucy asked as she swung around her kusarigama, slicing away blades of grass in a futile attempt to calm her nerves. I'm getting a bit worried myself. It's been over 3 hours, Kisame. The Kiba wielder was stopped in her speech when Samahata emerged from the depths and slithered to Kisame who had been sitting on the side of the lake. G. Kisami's eyes widened in shock as he turned to Amayuri and Lucy.
What's wrong? What did Samahata say? Urza's. Kisame couldn't relay his message and Amayuri and Lucy were fearing the worst only for the water of the lake to explode outwards. Everyone stared in shock as the large head of Amphileon landed before them.
Kya! The blonde screamed loudly before her mouth began to froth and she fainted, eyes rolling up into her head. Another tower of water followed afterwards and the two sword teachers watched as the armor-clad woman that was Urza Scarlet landed atop the beast's detached head with a victorious smirk. She shone with a bright light before replacing the Atlantean armor with her Heart Cruise armor. However, though they were shocked to see Urza alive and kicking, Amayuri and Kisami's eyes were fixated on the shining platinum blade before them. Now that she was on the surface and her eyes no longer limited to seeing just green, she was amazed to see the blade's appearance. Urza traced her finger over the word, Caliburn, on the hilt. The blade of Caliburn was a shining platinum, just like its hilt. Along the length of the blade was the image of a black dragon. A shining emerald lay in the center of the hilt of the legendary sword and reflected the light of the sun brightly. I've done it, she muttered softly, though she said it with more disbelief than anything. I am now the wielder of Merlin's third blade. Caliburn. Amayuri hugged her fellow redhead while Kisame ruffled the shorter girl's hair. You did great, Urza-chan, the shark-toothed man said with pride. I had to get a photo of this, Amayuri exclaimed as she began to watch the sword. Urza laughed as she watched Amayuri drag the still unconscious Lucy along by her leg. Urza decided to show off the sword a little and its blade caught afire. Oh my god, it can catch on fire. I've heard of this ability, but this is just awesome. Kya! Amayuri released a fangirl-ish squeal as she hopped up and down. Unknown location, Eastern Mountains, Fury. A large wolf pack snarled dangerously at the figure that they circled, their golden eyes eyeing their prey with hunger. The wolves then tensed their leg muscles, preparing to pounce. One wolf then received a bark from the alpha of the pack, ordering to strike. All the wolves leapt forth, but as they were in midair, The figure before them vanished in a blur of speed, as if he vanished into the wind.
The wolves suddenly appeared to freeze in midair before their bodies were shown to have numerous parts of their bodies having caved inwards as if struck by a powerful force. The sounds then caught up with the speed of the blows that were dealt and the echo of bones breaking filled the air. The wolves fell to the ground, bleeding heavily as they dreadfully damaged internally.
Insert music. Naruto Shippuden. I'm home. 2 months. That fucking fairy tale maid shattered my arm and I was incapacitated for 2 whole months. The figure spoke in a slight edged voice, his head of spiky blonde hair blowing back softly by the wind. His blue eyes shone like the sea as they reflected the light of the sun. A laugh then met the young man's ears. So your arm is better, I see. The deep voice chuckled. The man's blue eyes shifted upwards, his lips forming a small frown as if he were insulted. Of course. A regular human would have had to spend years to recover from an injury that involved shattered bones. Though I feel so humiliated for being put into such a state because that human coughed blood into my eyes. However, though I had woken nearly 1 week after the battle, these 2 months of rehabilitation for my arm was quite annoying. Oh, don't be such a whiner, Naruto. The fairy tale guy is dead. We left him bleeding out in the sea without his arm and leg. It would take miracles to make that guy survive what you did to him. Silence then filled the air as the Ogono Fujin and Onibi Mayobu walked towards the edge of the mountain they were currently residing in. The blonde Dragonslayer then looked down and spied a small town. Kurama followed his partner's gaze and the crimson-furred Exceed gained a small smile as he pointed at the town. Yes, it is really there. Though you follow your Two-san's words to the letter, he is no longer around so you don't have to listen to him anymore. You can defy him without anyone knowing and without him ever finding out. Naruto's face remained impassive before a sigh escaped his lips. A melancholy look formed on his face. It's been years since I've seen them. What if they have forgotten me or what if they don't recognize me anymore? He asked. Kurama's eyes widened as he looked down at the Apocalypse Dragonslayer being so human. I know you miss them, so here's the thing. I'm going to give you an ultimatum. You either go down there of your own free will or I go 6 tails and forcibly drag you there. Your choice? Kurama grinned like the vulpine he could become. Naruto let out a small chuckle as his seemingly dull blue eyes regained a bit of light within them. Truth be told, Kurama. I would actually like that. To see them again despite it being against that overgrown garden snake's wishes. Then let's go. The fox-dressed cat said, patting the blonde's head. Mush. Don't push it, Baka Kitsune. Naruto growled as he jumped off the edge of the mountain cliff and flew towards the area. Towards Clovertown. Clovertown, Fury, year X 784. The sun shone brilliantly in the expanse of blue that was the sky, casting its golden rays down upon the populated town of Clover. The buildings were the same, the people were the same. Nothing had changed. This would be considered a good thing in the minds of the 2 travelers that entered the town. The smells of the forest that wafted down from the nearby mountains mixed in with the air of the town and made the 2 bask in the afterglow of nostalgia. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, son of the wizard saints Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, adopted son of Agnologia the Black Dragon of the Apocalypse and, secretly, the SS-class criminal known as the Ogono Fujin, along with Kurama, Exceed of Edalus and, secretly, the SS-class criminal known as the Onibi Mayobu, walked past the people and buildings. Blue and red orbs scanned the area as they passed through and Naruto's normally neutral face seemed to brighten and his lips strained as he finally formed the hidden smirk he had wanted to make. Kurama laughed atop Naruto's head and patted the blonde's skull. Seems like someone got happy, quickly. He commented. Naruto's slitted blue eyes glanced upwards at the fox-costumed feline and he growled. I deny all claims to feeling petty emotions. I have released all emotional and sentimental attachment to this place and there is nothing here that can revert me back to. Ramen! Naruto exclaimed as he sped forth and stopped straight in front of a ramen shop. Kurama's sweat dropped at the blonde's personality switch. Well, that degenerated quickly. He thought. He looked through the glass window of the shop and suddenly he noticed Naruto's eyes widened in surprise as he looked down. Following the blue-eyed Dragonslayer's gaze, Kurama's crimson orbs widened as well as he spotted the object that Naruto focused on. She had long brown hair, but it was tied back into a short ponytail and the majority of what would be visible from a frontal point of view was obscured by the cream-colored cloth she wore over it. Her skin was a lovely tan color and her chocolate brown eyes shone with life. She wore a long-sleeved, cream-colored top and pants and had a white apron tied around her waist. Though her clothing was rather baggy, it did little to hide the hourglass figure she was sporting. Well, she's certainly grown up, hasn't she? Kurama commented with a chuckle. He received no response however as Naruto, as if caught in a trance, looked in awe at the woman he called his Nei-chan. Yama Ichiraku had grown up indeed. The blonde slowly walked towards the door of the ramen restaurant, Ichiraku Ramen, formerly known as Tuichi's Ramen. The door opened and Naruto looked around for a short while as he took in the sights and sounds of the quaint building. Everything was exactly as it used to be. There were a few tables here and there. varying in size so as to accommodate for small to large parties. There was a sort of bar-like area as well, the place where Naruto had sat when he first came to the ramen-making joint when he was 6. His eyes widened when he noticed that the seat was actually open. Kurama moved to Naruto's lap as the blonde sat down on the bar stool. Ayame had her back turned to the pair as she washed a few ramen bowls, and Tuichi, the old ramen chef himself, was busy cooking the noodles and heating the broth. The old ramen chef was shown to look the same, though the increased amount of wrinkles on his face showed that time was not his friend. Aging 7 years did not help the old man in terms of his age, but the man was cooking like he never aged a day, flipping cutlery and tossing bowls at Ayame with unseen accuracy and precision. "1 pork ramen, please," Naruto spoke. Ayame nodded, not looking behind her as she quickly picked up one of the already prepared bowls of pork ramen and rested it down in front of Naruto with a pleasant smile on her face. "Here you go, sir. Enjoy your meal." She spoke with her ever-present tone of respect and kindness that she always showed to customers. Naruto nodded as he saw Ayame turn her back to him once more, and he couldn't help but feel a pang of hurt. "So she didn't recognize me after all." He sighed as he broke apart the chopsticks that were rested atop the bowl. "But one guess, I cannot blame her. I have been gone for 7 years in her time. Don't let it get to you, kid. She's working, so she obviously can't spend too much time focusing on your appearance," the red-eyed Exceed said to the Apocalypse Dragonslayer as he pointed to the brown-haired girl. True, Ayame was furiously washing ramen bowls that were recently picked up as well as speeding in and out from behind the counter to deliver ordered meals. The blonde Dragonslayer did not respond and glanced down at the bowl of steaming hot noodles and broth before him. He snapped apart his chopsticks and he chuckled as he remembered the first time he used chopsticks. He thought it was accidental when the chopsticks broke apart, only to be told that they were supposed to that by Ayame. "Itadakimasu," he muttered before picking up a few noodles, a piece of egg and a single pork cutlet that were soaked in the broth. His Dragonslayer senses were assaulted by the combination of smells and his nose felt as if it had died and gone to heaven. As usual, no one can compare to Ji-chan's ramen. The spiky-haired blonde dug into his meal. Unlike the times in his youth, the blonde chose to savor the bowl of ramen before him and did not finish until a few minutes had passed. "You slow down or what, Kit? Normally you'd be able to down that thing in 30 seconds. 20 if you were trying," Kurama chuckled. Naruto slurped up the broth as he tilted the bowl to his lips and let out a sigh of content. "And let my first bowl of ramen upon coming back end so quickly? I think not, Kurama," Naruto said. Naruto looked down at the ramen bowl and his lips tugged harshly as he tried to resist the urge to perform the facial expression, but he was denied that pleasure. The trademark foxy grin that he wore in his childhood broke out and his sharper-than-usual canines were visible to all. Kurama looked at the blonde he called his partner and, not in public, friend. Though Naruto's eyes were a bright cerulean, they lacked the shine of emotion they used to have when he left the company of the humans he called nakama, such as Haku and Zabuza when he was 16. As a result, Kurama always used to comment that Naruto's eyes were always dull on the inside, no matter how bright they appeared to be. Of course, Naruto never really cared or paid attention to the feline's comments. However, looking at the young man now, Kurama could only laugh as he saw Naruto's eyes regain that shine of youth, his irises seeming to sparkle like sapphires. Having his humanity stripped from him at the physical age of 13, Naruto had been forcibly matured into his draconian nature and thus, his humanity was nothing more than a teenager. Thus, Kurama could only say that Naruto was truly a child at heart, no matter how he saw it. The Exceed watched as Naruto then took a deep breath. Kurama watched with amusement as he quickly reclaimed his spot atop Naruto's head. "Oi Ji-chan. Get me another ramen here," he bellowed. The entire restaurant went silent as they watched the blonde with looks that showed if they wondered if the blonde was crazy. However, Ayame and Tuichi had different reactions. Tuichi turned with a furious look on his face, while Ayame had faced the source of the voice and immediately fell into a seemingly hypnotic trance, unmoving and her eyes unblinking. "Oi, who the hell said that? I'm not that old and I'm Tuichi fell silent. Both Ichiraku members froze as they looked at the source of the voice. Tuichi and Ayame stared at the spiky-haired blonde who was currently wearing a confident smirk on his face and the Kitsune costumed cat atop his head who grinned like a certain Cheshire cat from Wonderland. "No, it can't be," Ayame whispered, and the bowl in her hands was lost from her lack of grip round, but the sound of ceramic shattering on the wooden floor was not heard as a soft gust of wind flowed through the ramen shop and Naruto appeared in front of his brown-haired friend with a toothy grin now present on his face. "Oi, you nearly dropped this. Are you gonna really getting too old to handle holding up simple bowls in your hands? One bet Ji-chan could do it." "Nay, Ayame nei-chan," Naruto said, his blue eyes glowing with mischief as he rested the bowl atop the counter. Ayame's breath hitched as she reached over to the whisker-marked blonde and touched his cheek, hesitant in doing so. "You're real?" she seemed to ask herself rather than the person in front of her. "You're real, so that means I'm not dreaming." I find it rather illogical to find that when reality is standing in your face that humans tend to refer to the situation being a dream. Naruto said with a confused tilt of his head. Naruto-kun. Is that? The older Ichiraku's voice question was never completed as he continued to stare in shock at the young man before him and his daughter. It's me. I'm really back. Ji-chan. Ayame ne-chan. Ayame's form trembled. Her eyes hidden by the shadows of her hair, and Naruto gained a confused look. Oi, Ayame. You gonna cry or something? Kurama asked. Ayame's head snapped up and revealed her brown eyes were in fact lined with tears. Kurama too? The feline grinned widely and nodded. After a small moment of her brain finally convincing her the situation before her was in fact real, Ayame leapt at Naruto and embraced the much taller boy in her arms. Naruto-kun. Kurama. She wrapped the two in as tight a hug as she could manage. Naruto's eyes widened and he flinched, his muscles contracting as he felt the woman's arms snake around his body, binding his arms to his sides. Naruto had willingly suppressed the urge to strike at Ayame when she had leapt and jumped atop Ayame's head and purred like the exceed he was and licked the side of her face like a normal cat would do. A hug? Naruto thought. It had been years since he had acquired physical contact in the form of affection. The most recent form of physical contact he ever had was the punch to the chest from Gildart's Clive. She's hugging me? He then looked to see Ayame was now crying, tears of joy spilling from her eyes before planting her face back in Naruto's chest. The blonde Dragonslayer felt his undershirt become wet from her tears. Naruto-kun, I thought we'd never see you again after you left all those years ago. I'm so glad you're back, she said, her voice slightly distorted due to the sobs she was holding back. Tuichi wiped away the strayed tears that escaped his eyes. Ayame took a step back as her father walked towards the towering blonde. You've certainly grown up, Naruto. You're much taller now, he chuckled. 6 feet and 2 inches, and I'm only 20 years old, Ji-chan. Tell people that ramen stunts growth to shove it. He joked. The three reunited humans and one exceed laughed before it fell silent. Tuichi and Ayame gave Naruto a look of nostalgia and they hugged him once before letting go. It's so good to see you again. Naruto nodded and he clasped Tuichi's outstretched hand. Firm grip too. You've really become a strong man, haven't you? I pride myself on my strength, Ji-chan. Naruto said with a tone of pride in his voice. Tuichi then looked at the clock on the wall of the restaurant and saw that it was about half an hour past noon, 12:30. He glanced around the ramen shop and saw that there wasn't many people left in the shop. Though, the customers were quick to catch the ramen chef's gaze and saw the look he was giving them when he saw that they were staring at the three of them. Naruto was then gifted to a few free helpings of ramen, and by a few, that classified in the numbers that excelled beyond 50. Even after so many years, you really haven't changed in terms of your stomach, have you? Ji-chan, I could eat 100 of these and still come out looking like I am now.
My metabolism is something people could only dream of having. Naruto stuck out his tongue playfully at the two Ichirakus. After downing the ramen bowls, Naruto created a few hand motions and a magic seal sprung up where his hands lay as he performed seal magic, pocket dimension. He opened the dimension and took out a small bag made of brown leather and removed a few of the gems he kept in the storage. 2 sapphires, a ruby and 5 pieces of silver.
As Naruto placed the bag back in the pocket dimension, he closed it and looked to see Tuichi and Ayame were staring at him in shock. Naruto-kun, I know you used to do magic when you were younger, but I thought you were a wind mage. One does not limit themselves to what they know, instead they must expand their repertoire and venture into the areas that which they do not know. I have followed that principle and thus I have expanded my usage of magic. Naruto explained. He then grabbed Tuichi's wrist and opened out his palm before resting the chosen precious stones and metals in it. That should cover it. More than enough. You know, Naruto-kun, you don't have to pay. We are more than happy to treat you and Kurama to a free meal, to celebrate your return home. Ayame smiled at the blonde boy. Naruto's and Kurama's eyes widened at that. Home. The word rolled off their tongues as they said it. The Exceed and Dragonslayer glanced at one another before turning as Tuichi laughed. He placed the payment back in Naruto's hands. Ayame-chan is right, Naruto. You have no need to pay. He then snatched up the single ruby and pocketed it, though I'm going to need to pay my taxes, so I'll be keeping this one. His actions causing Naruto, Kurama and Ayame to sweat drop. You're a hypocritical old man. You know that, not to mention you serve this horrible piece of food. Ramen can kill you. Kurama deadpanned. Tuichi's eyes hardened as he picked up his spatula and slapped it against his hand. Do I need to remind you of what happened when you insulted my ramen? The elder Ichiraku asked with an eerily sweet tone. Kurama's eyes widened as he ducked behind the blonde Dragonslayer. No, not the spatula. Anything but the spatula, Kurama exclaimed, peeking at the two ramen chefs. Tuichi chuckled as he rested the spatula down only to pick it back up quickly and jab it in Kurama's direction. The cat yowled and comically shot up to the ceiling and stuck upside down by his claws. fur and tail standing vertically upright through his fox-themed costume and eyes shut tightly out of fear and surprise. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the Exceed. Said Exceed caught the blue-eyed blonde's gaze and saw the hidden smirk on his neutral face. Oh no, Kurama thought. Blackmail material, you mangy feline. Naruto grinned mischievously at the red-furred cat. Naruto stood up as he opened the pocket dimension and put away his payment as Kurama flew down from his perch on the ceiling. Very well, but if you will not accept payment in currency, then at least allow me to pay you back in terms of labor. I cannot let such hospitality go without repaying you both. Naruto, you don't have to do. Ayame stopped when she saw Naruto's soft gaze, his dull blue eyes seeming to gain back their sapphire glow.
Please, Ayame-ne-chan, Ji-chan, it's the least I can do for all you've done for me. And I don't mean the ramen alone. Naruto then rolled back the sleeves of his undershirt and cloak and helped to quickly clean up the dishes that were in need of being washed and cleaned. After he did that, Kurama aided in drying them by placing his paws on the bowls so as to expel heat from them and evaporate the water. Once the ramen bowls were all cleaned, Naruto took his seat once more as Ayame and Toichi leaned up against the wooden countertop.
So, Naruto my boy, when did you and this mangy furball get back? Toichi asked as he patted Kurama on the head. The fire-manipulating cat hissed at the old man before crossing his forearms and pouted cutely like any 2-foot-tall walking cat in a costume could. While ago, earlier today. What have you two been up to? I hope you weren't getting into any trouble. I don't want my little Otudo bothering anyone. Ayame said with a smile, patting the blonde's head. Naruto and Kurama looked at one another, sweat dropping. We have to lie already? That was fast, Kurama thought. We just traveled. They responded simultaneously. They weren't lying. Much. They just became ambiguous in their response. Naruto and Kurama explained of their travels to the other parts of Fury, to Oshibana Town, Anabu's Town, Tully Village and Frisia Town. Though they were both careful to lie expertly so as to cover the fact that they were actually labeled as SS-class criminals by the Magic Council and what they had done, merely stating they had visited those towns as mere tourists. Do you plan on joining a guild, Naruto? I heard there are a few good ones around Fury. Toichi asked. Naruto's and Kurama's eyes hardened for a brief moment, but he hid it as his gaze returned to an indifferent one. We prefer to be independent. We do not wish to be a part of those little clubhouses. Too many restrictions, Kurama answered with a matter-of-fact tone. Well, you and Naruto were always free spirits. Ayame giggled as she ruffled the taller boy's head of hair. So what types of magic do you use then? I remember when we were younger, when we first met, you were shown to be only capable of using wind magic. Futon, I think is what you called it. Naruto nodded in confirmation. Yes. Futon, seal magic and energy make. He said as he counted raised 3 fingers. Yes, I am a badass. Bow to my badassery, mortals. Naruto spoke as his chest swelled with mock pride. Ayame and Toichi laughed at the blonde man before them. As a period of silence washed over the four, Ayame's eyes narrowed and thought. Something bothering you, Ne-chan? Naruto asked with a childish tilt of his head. Ayame shook her head. No, not at all. I was just wondering if you came to see us first or if you had went to see the others before coming here, she replied. Naruto looked at the brown-haired girl before looking down at the floor with a frown. Are they still here in Clovertown? He asked, a hopeful look in his eyes. Ayame ruffled the blonde's hair. Of course. Though, you'll be surprised to see how much they've changed, Naruto-kun. Do you want me to take you to them? It's been 7 years after all and you may need an escort, she joked. Peeved. I'm a grown-ass man, Ayane Ne-chan. I don't need an escort, he said, sticking out his tongue in a childish manner. Kurama's sweat dropped at his Dragonslayer partner. Grown-ass man, my ass. You should see how childish you are, brat. I can kill you just as easily as K. Naruto paused in his speech, noting that he almost let slip that he killed people. He then snarled at Kurama, his dragon persona surfacing once more. Just watch your tongue, cat, before I pull out of your throat. He then felt movement towards him and he quickly yanked at the assaulting object and aimed his claws to shred it, only to pause when he saw it was just Ayame about to pat his face. His eyes widened and he quickly fought back the adrenaline rushing through his blood before shaking his head. Are you alright, Otuto? Ayame asked, concerned for her little brother figure's well-being. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I'm just sorry. I didn't hurt you, did I? Naruto asked. Ayame held her wrist when the whisker-cheeked Dragonslayer released it. Tu-san was right when he said you had a firm grip, Naruto-kun. It's alright though, but it's good to see you have such quick reflexes. You really have become a strong young man, Naruto-kun. She complimented him. Brown eyes played tricks on her as she stared at a 6-year-old Naruto who was fussing about his first time eating ramen, only to blink and suddenly see the broad-shouldered, tall man sitting before her. The blonde's pride grew at that, but he then winced as he felt his cheek being harshly pinched. But no matter how big you get, you're still my surrogate, Otuto. Now come on, I'll take you to the others. Ayame said as she walked out from behind the counter and grabbed Naruto's hand. The taller human was forcibly pulled from his seat before Ayame turned and waved to her father. "I'll be back, San. No trouble, Ayame-chan. Just make sure to keep an eye on the boy. Kurama, make sure Ayame stays out of trouble. I'm not as young as I used to be." "You're telling me?" Kurama mumbled. He spent 90 years in a pocket dimension and now 7 years in Earthland time. That's accumulated addition of 97 years to his original age, which was. Kurama's face scrunched up in thought as he scratched his head with a claw. "I completely forgot how old I am. I know I'm well past 400 years, seeing as how I was born in Aeolus long before Faust was king. Ah, never mind." He scrapped the thought before sprouting his feathered wings via era magic, and flew after Naruto and Ayame. Streets of Clover Town, Fury, ha 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 ha. "Really, Kurama, you got your ass kicked by a squirrel?" Ayame roared with laughter. Kurama hissed like the feline he was and turned away with a look of embarrassment. "I didn't get my ass kicked by a squirrel. The thing just ran away and I just happened to wander back into the forest where the entire clan was. Damn acorns hurt like a bitch." Kurama whined as he nursed the invisible bumps on his head. Ayame's laughter increased as she rested her head on Naruto's shoulder. "Oh dear Kami. You guys sounded like you had a lot of fun when you guys left. So, Kurama, Naruto-kun. Did you meet any interesting people when you guys traveled through Fury?" "Well, we met quite a few people," the Exceed replied. Images of Zabuza and the other Dragonslayers and Exceed they met went through their minds. Ayame was about to ask about those people when froze up. A slapping sound met Naruto's and Kurama's enhanced hearing as they looked to see Ayame clutching her rear. "Still SXY as ever, Ayame-chan," the male said as he walked past the three. Naruto's eyes flickered to their shining white and his sharpened canines bared. He walked up to the man that dared to assault his sister figure. The man's back turned. Naruto reached out and his firm grip held fast on the man's shoulder before he was spun around. "Oi, what the fuck?" the man spoke. Naruto snarled as his fierce gaze bore into the man's soul, silencing him. "Who the hell do you think you are?" he roared. "Don't touch me, you little brat," the older man said. The man had dark brown hair and a bit of facial hair growing around his face. He was dressed in some rather fancy clothing consisting of a purple dress shirt, black pants and some leather shoes. A gold watch was worn on his wrist. The man's dark-colored eyes met Naruto's own cerulean ones with defiance. The man continued to stare at the blonde mage and suddenly Naruto's eyes widened as he recognized something familiar about him. There's something familiar about you." Ayame was about to intervene so as to pull Naruto away from the man he currently had a grip on, only for Naruto to grab Ayame's wrist and push her gently back before gripping the man's collar that much harder. "You, what the? Who are?" The man was silenced as Naruto reared back his fist and punched the man hard in the face, sending him straight into the ground. A powerful burst of pain racked through the man's body as he was left an imprint from the force with which he was struck with. He was about to rise up, only to have Naruto's boot slam down on top of his chest. "I remember you, you little fucker. You're that Roy bastard that Ayame-chan wouldn't go out with and then you tried to beat me up before getting your ass kicked by me to vent. A task which you failed to carry out miserably," Naruto growled. "Wait, you're that little brat from before? You." The man, now identified as Roy, didn't get to finish his outburst as Naruto overpowered him, both verbally and physically, as the son of two wizard saints pushed his boot further down upon it harder for him to breathe. "You dare to touch Ayame-chan? I'll kill you," Naruto roared as the wind picked up around him, his eyes blazing with fury. Naruto held up his hand and it began to glow blue as the core of a Rasengan began to take shape, but it quickly dispersed as his wrist was grabbed by the daughter of Tuichi and she looked at him with a look he had seen only when she disapproved of something he did. He didn't like that look. Naruto's gaze broke down and he released a sigh as the magic power he released calmed down. He took a deep breath before snapping his head back to Roy as he tried to pry Naruto's boot off of his chest. "I'm no stranger to your type. Human," Naruto whispered loud enough for only Roy to hear. "Do anything as idiotic as this ever again and you will find your body broken. You're lucky I'm in front of Nei-chan, else your head would be detached from your body." Naruto then stood back to his full height and took his boot off of Ayame's assailant before turning away and walking away with Ayame and Kurama on either side of him. Roy groaned as he rose up from his imprint in the ground, gripping his painting back, but suddenly he felt a powerful force crash into him, sending him skidding along the road and dirtying his clothes, ripping it in some places. He quickly snapped his head back and looked to see Naruto glancing back at him, a hand raised as he flipped him the bird. Roy's growl was halted in his throat and he gulped it back down as he saw Naruto's eyes change from blue to startling white. Roy quickly scrambled to his feet and took off. Bad enough he was beaten by the blonde when he was only 6 years old. Now that he was older and noticeably stronger, well, let's just say Roy liked his body intact. "That bastard, I swear if I see him again I'll..." The blonde paused as he felt Ayame grab his hand and squeezed it reassuringly. "It's okay, Naruto-kun. It's okay, alright. I'm a big girl and I can handle myself. I don't need protecting, after all I'm supposed to be the older sibling in this relationship we have, nay? She joked. Naruto's eyes narrowed at the brown-haired girl, but he nodded. Fine, but next time he does anything like that I'm going to send Kurama to burn his flesh and bones to ash. He growled. Kurama nodded and backed up his partner's statement with a wisp of flame bursting forth from his paws. Ayame frowned as she noted the murderous looks on both males' faces before sighing as she slapped them both upside the head. What was that for? They whined as they rubbed the assaulted parts of their skulls. Ayame put her hands on her hips and glared at the two menacingly. I don't like it when you two show such angry looks on your faces. Though your anger is understandable, like I said. I can take care of myself, Naruto-kun, Kurama. So the next time you show such looks again, I'm going to slap you again. Understood? Naruto and Kurama flinched and when Ayame raised her hand. Understood, she stated once more. The two SS-class criminals nodded. Yes, Ayame-sama. They bowed to the female. The violent female ramen chef nodded before turning around. Good, now come on, we have to get going. Oh, by the way, who are we going to see? Kurama asked. Ayame smiled as she glanced back the two. For nostalgia's sake, I'll be taking you to see the others in the order you met them when you first came when you were 6 years old, Naruto-kun. Sakura-chan it is then. Naruto and Kurama spoke simultaneously. They followed Ayame through the streets of Clover Town before stopping at a 3-story building that was painted a dark shade of red with pink sakura blossom trees on either side of the entrance door. Above the door was a sign that said, Haruno's. It was straightforward, unlike certain stores that made up weird names for their brands, like a certain one in Oshibana Town that was called Lacey's. There was no one in the store called Lacey and the store's initial manager wasn't named Lacey either, so the name made no sense to Naruto and Kurama. Naruto, Ayame and Kurama entered through the main entrance and Naruto and Kurama released a duo of low whistles as they noticed just how large the building itself had gotten interior-wise. When Naruto was younger, the store was only 2 floors, one for the selling of clothing and the other was the living quarters for Sakura's parents and Sakura herself. Now though, it was revealed that the store was worthy of holding 3 stories as whole. Large floors as revealed by the starryway that led to the upper levels were dedicated only to clothing. Numerous amounts of people were scattered throughout the store, looking at clothes, buying clothes, navigating through the clothing aisles, and there were even a few children who were hiding in the clothing racks as they played hide and seek. Childhood sure was a fun time. The sound of footsteps then reached Naruto's ears and he turned to see a 5-foot-tall woman with long pink hair that reached to her mid-back. There were also single strands of silver scattered throughout her locks, showing that she was not as old as she seemed. She had bright emerald green eyes and her skin was a light shade of peach. She wore a sleeveless red top with a white circle on the back of it and had on a pair of baggy black pants and black sandals. A tag on her left breast read manager. The woman smiled as she pushed back a few locks of hair behind her ears. Hello. She greeted him with a friendly wave. I'm Seiko Haruno, manager of the establishment. How may I help you today, young man? She asked politely. Naruto's blue eyes widened when he saw the woman who looked no older than 35. She was supposed to be 49 by his calculations. Seiko-san, is that really you? Your hair shows time was not your friend, but your physical appearance denies that claim. Naruto stated with a shocked look on his face. Damn girl. You're working it. Kurama said as he slapped himself with a paw to make sure the woman he was seeing before him was real. Seiko's head tilted in confusion. While I am flattered by your compliments, I'm afraid I do not know you. Forgive me. I am not good with remembering faces. Should I know you? She asked. Kurama and Naruto frowned deeply as the words of her not remembering them caused a small pang of hurt to form in their chests. What is this feeling? Why do I feel so hurt by Seiko-san not remembering me? No, dragons do not let emotions burden them, but still. I can't help but feel. Seiko gave a small apology however. She looked at Kurama and her eyes widened as she looked like something had been thrown at her and nailed her dead in the face. Wait, you're a talking cat. With wings. I only know one member of that species and he looked just like you, but it's not possible. Oh, it's them all right, Seiko-san. Ayame said as she stepped out from behind Naruto's taller frame. Seiko's eyes remained wide as she saw the old ramen chef's daughter. Ayame-chan. Please tell me I'm not dreaming. You're not dreaming. I could pinch you to confirm it. No, no need. She raised her hand before touching Kurama's costumed head. She then scratched behind his ears causing the red-eyed feline to purr in ecstasy. Kurama, is that really you? Seiko asked. The Exceed nodded. Do you know any other SXY talking cat like me? Kurama smirked. Seiko laughed at the kitsune costumed feline before shaking her head and hugging the feline into her chest. Not that said feline was complaining.
It's so good to see you. I've missed you and, wait, but if you're here then that means that you're. She paused in her sentence when she looked up at the 6 feet 2 tall blonde man before her. The physically 20-year-old man's sapphire orbs stared down into her emerald ones and she reached a hand out and stroked the whisker marks on his cheeks. Feeling warm flesh, she concluded that this was no apparition brought about by senility. She wasn't even at the age where senility would occur anyway.
NN Naruto-kun. She then looked down from his face to his chest where the golden flame necklace she gave him for hung. Her eyes lined with more tears, but she held them back. Her hand covered her mouth as she did a sharp intake of breath. Seiko-san, a pleasure to see you again. He gave a small bow before breaking out into a large foxy grin. Do you remember me now? A rapid nod was his response before the pink-haired woman slammed into him as she took him into an embrace alongside the Exceed. The blonde Dragonslayer and red-furred Exceed chuckled as they patted Seiko on the head. I can't believe it's really you two. She smiled as twin streams of tears fell from her eyes. Well, I would suggest you believe it's Seiko-san. Kurama and I are really standing here. Oh, my boy, you look so grown up. She smiled as she let go of the two. Kurama, you look much more fluffy. I just want to stroke you all day, she gushed. The Exceed was tempted to say, that's what she said, but he refrained from doing so as it would ruin the mood. Thank you, Seiko-san. As I have said beforehand, you have aged rather gracefully, it appears. 49 years old and still looking so young. Seiko blushed at the compliment. Naruto-kun, please. She giggled. She then looked the boy up and down before nodding in approval. You seem to have really grown taller. You look so strong too. I bet you are a real heartbreaker. So, how many girls have you bedded? She waggled her eyebrows. Naruto's eyes widened as he blushed furiously, causing a laugh to erupt from Ayame, Seiko and Kurama by his flustered appearance. WHWH what? Seiko-san, he exclaimed, pouting like a child. Ayame-ne-chan. Seiko-san is teasing me. Make her stop, he said. Ayame let loose a giggle as she noticed the amusement in Naruto's eyes as he pointed at the pink-haired woman. Oh, Naruto-kun, you really are a child at heart, it seems. Sakura's mother chuckled. So, when did you two get back? She asked, glancing between the Dragonslayer and Exceed. Just today. They answered simultaneously. They stopped by San and I for some ramen before I offered to take them to see the others, you included. Ayame added. So what have you been up to? Well, I found out I'm a mage. Naruto spoke as he released a soft gust of wind in Seiko's face, causing her hair to blow back. So I made myself into a wandering mage and Kurama has been keeping me out of trouble, he joked. Trouble find him, it seems. The Kitsune-costumed Exceed commented. Naruto then glanced around the shop and looked down at Seiko. So it seems your business is booming. The increase in size of the store shows that. The green-eyed woman nodded. Yes, it has. Plus, with the help from your rather generous payments all those years ago, I was able to gain the funds needed to expand. Plus, I was able to move out of the shop and buy a much larger house for myself here in Clover Town, so that means I have 3 floors for selling clothes. Speaking of clothes though, she looked at Naruto's own and gave a look of approval, but still shook her head. While your clothes are nice looking, why don't I fix you up with something else? Think of it as a welcome back present, Seiko said with a motherly smile. Naruto chuckled as he glanced at his current wear. I would be honored, but first I want to check on the others. Sakura isn't here, so where is she? Naruto asked. Seiko nodded as she made a mental note to get Naruto some new clothes. Well, I knew you wouldn't have come here just to see an old goat like me. Sakura-chan doesn't live with me because she decided to be independent once she turned 18. She didn't want to work here in the store anyway because she said she didn't want to be cooped up in here all the time. The elder Haruno spoke. Naruto and Kurama then tilted their heads in confusion at that statement. So, where is she then? The two asked. Hospital, Clovertown, Fury. Alright, now we make a small incision by posterior vena cava. That's where the majority of the cholesterol is blocking the flow to his heart. Yes, senpai. The surgeon picked up a scalpel and made a thin incision at the lower left vein which carried deoxygenated blood back to the heart. However, rather than just blood, there was also some disgusting yellow-colored substance, dyed crimson due to the blood coating it. He then parted the opened and made it a bit wider using the scalpel as well as using a pair of tweezers to pull back the other end of the incision. Alright, remove the cholesterol blockages. Geez, this is disgusting. This guy must eat so much junk food. I mean, he's practically bleeding more cholesterol than actual blood right now. The rookie surgeon commented as his fellow surgeons aided in removing. Don't complain so much. The head of the current surgery operation scolded the rookie. Keep your mind focused on the task at hand. Any slip up and you'd have this man's death on your hands because you might spread apart the incision too far or cut the vena cava even deeper and have him bleed out. My apologies, senpai. The rookie apologized. After removing the large amount of solid cholesterol from the patient's posterior vena cava, the senpai of the rookie surgeons nodded. Well done. Next time I will show you all how to sew the incisions close, but for now let me do it. You're welcome to watch. The rookies nodded as they watched their senpai pick up a needle and thread and began to easily sew the incision shut. You must make sure not to pierce into the flesh you need to close too deeply, else you may end up hitting something important. Also, when doing this part of the surgery, be sure to do it carefully, yet quickly. You may be able to do this with more experience, but as of right now, slow and steady would have to be your best bet. Yes, senpai. The other surgeons nodded before they were dismissed. The rookies then all left the room as their senpai was going to sew the man's chest cavity shut once more. They all removed their gloves, masks and caps and rested them in the area of the room where the dirty, bloodied surgeon equipment were to be cleansed or thrown out. God, that was disgusting. To think we had to do this for 3 more years. Godu said. Godu was a 20-year-old young man with spiky black hair and black eyes. He had an angular face and had a rather thin physique. Hey, calm down Godu. We only had to do a set amount of practical surgeries anyway. I still had to do some LPs, lumbar punctures. I really need to get those out of the way. However, every single other rookie like us is always butting in and taking another patient away so I can never finish them. Erica said. Erica was a girl who was the same age as her 3 other friends who attended the medical academy of Clovertown with her, 20 years old, with slightly curly blonde hair and deep red eyes. She had a voluptuous figure with C-cup breasts and like her fellow rookie medicinal learners, she was garbed in the blue top and pants associated with those who had just come from the OR, operating room. Well, why don't you just try to get those patients faster, Erica? Frankie asked. Frankie was a rather muscular young man, but despite his large frame he was actually very nimble with his fingers. He had straight, dark brown hair that was long enough to be tied back into a ponytail. He had gray-colored eyes and had a silver chain with a cross worn around his neck. Because, Frankie, I'm too busy trying to finish all the other parts of my practicals. I have 3 more lobotomies, 5 more prosthetic replacement experiments, not to mention we have these practical surgeries too, Erica said to Frankie. Godu scratched his head as he watched Frankie and Erica continue to argue before turning to the 4th member of their little posse. Oi, Sakura-san, what else do you have to do? The 20-year-old girl had pink hair that stopped just below her shoulders with a red hairband that was previously tied around her right bicep for situations such as surgery practicals, wrapped around the middle of her hair. She had deep pools of emerald for eyes and had a round face. Her body had matured, giving her rather decent curves. Sakura Haruno's slightly pale skin gave off a slight glow due to the bright lights of the hospital she and her friends were currently in. Well, I'm pretty much in the same boat as Erica-san, still have some lumbar punctures to do and a few other things. She responded with a nervous laugh. Oh come on, Sakura-san. You're like a theoretical genius and you're like way more gifted in the medical field than even some of the veteran doctors here. Sakura waved her hand at Godu's praise. Oh please, I'm not that. Save the non-vanity act, Sakura-chan. We all know you're like the top of the class. You're gonna go places, girl. Erica said as she draped her arm around the rosette. And we're gonna go with you. I mean, who else is gonna give me my insanity meds when I'm not busy trying to keep these 2 bozos from killing someone, she joked. Oi, Frankie and Godu exclaimed, I resent that. Sakura laughed as she and her friends walked through the hallways before turning the corner. However, as they were busy talking about how the brain's neurological functions allowed it to generate the act of REM sleep, a young woman dressed in a nurse's outfit came running up to them. Excuse me, but is one of you Sakura Haruno? The nurse asked. The 4 raised their eyebrows in curiosity, but Sakura answered as she identified herself. Why? She asked. Is it because of someone sneaking into the hospital to get their practicals done earlier? It wasn't me, I tell you. I have proof. Shanaru, she yelled as her inner Sakura, as people like to call it, was slightly let loose. The nurse and Sakura's 3 friends' sweat dropped at her, but the nurse shook her head. No, it's just that someone is here to see you. He says he wanted to meet with you urgently. Who's he? The 4 young doctors in training asked. The nurse stepped aside and gestured down the hallways which led to the entrance of the hospital. The blonde boy. The one sitting with the cat and the pretty brown-haired girl. She smiled before walking off. Don't be a stranger, he's a cute one. She teased Sakura before walking off. Sakura blushed lightly at that as her eyes zoned in on the blonde that was sitting down in the waiting area near the entrance, petting what looked like a red-furred cat. Ooh, he is cute. I didn't know you had an admirer, Sakura-chan. Don't worry, we won't bother you, but in case he isn't interested in you, give me a holler, you hear. Erica winked before pushing Sakura forward and then dragging Godu and Frankie off with her to who knows where in the hospital. Sakura's sweat dropped at her blonde friend. She then walked off towards the other blonde that's supposedly waiting for her. As she got closer, her eyes glanced over the sitting young man. He was most likely taller than how he looked, a common trait with all people who tended to sit down, and had spiky blonde hair that looked like it could never be tamed no matter how much you combed it. His eyes were a startling blue color, cerulean or sapphire, she couldn't tell. He wore a black undershirt with what looked like part of a golden spiral patterned on the stomach area, but it was blocked off mostly by the black cloak he wore over it. A pair of black pants and boots completed the image. Though what confused her the most was that listen golden shine near his chest. Most likely the charm on a necklace, she assumed. She then stopped in front of the blonde man and noticed that the brown-haired girl was Ayame. Ayame-chan, what are you doing here? She asked. Ayame smiled before gesturing to the blonde and the cat in his lap. I'm here to have an old friend visit you, she replied vaguely. Sakura raised an eyebrow and her green eyes washed over the blonde before her again, only to shift upwards as he rose upwards. Her eyes widened slightly when she realized how much he towered over her. He was obviously over 6 feet tall. He could practically eat soup off of her head. Her eyes then narrowed as an aura of familiarity seemed to come from the young man before her. You seem familiar. Blonde hair, blue eyes, whisker-marked cheeks, fox costume wearing cat with red fur and red eyes. Oh, you must be Naruto and Kurama, she stated simply. Naruto and Kurama grinned as they noticed Sakura suddenly do a double take before shaking her head and physically slapping herself in the face to make sure she wasn't dreaming, an act which caused Naruto, Ayame and Kurama to sweat drop. Did she just slap herself? Naruto and Kurama, she yelled. Loud as ever I see, Sakura. Naruto chuckled as he shook the ringing sound out of his ears. Sakura gave a sheepish smile. Sorry, but it's just that. Wow, when did you guys reach back? Earlier today. We saw Ayame-ne-chan and Tuichiji-chan. We also saw your mother, Seiko-san. So you're a doctor now? Naruto asked as he gestured to her blue surgery shirt. No, not yet. I still have 3 years of medical school left. I'm not a mage since healing magic would most likely help, but I'm a pretty damn good medical student and my teachers say I'm practically a prodigy in it. Well, that's pretty ironic, Kurama said. Sakura raised an eyebrow in confusion. What do you mean? The violent, angry Sakura Haruno who hurts people when in a rage, is a healer. Oh, the irony. Ayame and Naruto chuckled along with Kurama at that. Sakura blushed heavily with embarrassment. Shut up, Naruto baka, Kurama baka, she humphed. She quickly gave the blonde a hug, which he returned before he was released so that Kurama could get an embrace from the pink-haired girl. So, Naruto, you've really changed. You're a lot taller than me now and you look pretty fit. You've been working out or something? She asked as she lightly punched his abdominal area. Naruto playfully stuck his tongue out at her. Maybe. Oh, and check it out. I'm a mage too. He pushed a small gust of magic-induced wind into his palm and made a tiny tornado spin atop the tip of each of his fingers. Sakura gazed in awe as she watched Naruto bend the wind to his command. As Naruto nullified the winds, however, he then blinked in confusion when he saw Sakura gain a shy look on her face. A light blush formed on her cheeks before she looked up at Naruto with an innocent look in her eyes. So Naruto, do you think I've changed at all? She asked, leaning her chest forward a bit. Naruto raised an eyebrow at her actions and Kurama and Ayame could only widen their eyes, their jaws slightly agape at the rosette. Naruto coughed into his hand before looking Sakura up and down. Well, I imagined your breasts would have been bigger than that by now, but other than that I'd have to say no, he answered truthfully. Silence filled the air and Naruto blinked in confusion as he noticed a gust of wind blow through the hospital and a tumbleweed followed behind it. What the hell? His thought was interrupted however when he received a hard punch to the face. Naruto baka. Naruto's eyes turned wide and empty as his face caved inwards. He flew backwards from the strength behind the enraged Sakura's punch and he slammed into the wall causing the entire upper half of his body to disappear into it, his legs dangling from the hole his body had made in the wall. Naruto, you don't tell a girl that after not seeing her for so long. What the hell is wrong with you? She roared as she tore him from the wall and began to rapidly bitch slap his face in a humorous manner. His soul stretched forth from his mouth as his body was dying, but Sakura grabbed Naruto's soul and forced it back into the blonde's body. Oh no, you're not dying yet. I'm not through with you, you little blonde baka. I'm your childhood friend and that's what you tell me. Why oughta? She never finished her sentence as she looked to see Naruto's body flailing about like a rag doll as Kurama flew off with it and Ayame running alongside him. She blinked as a formed above her head. She then looked to see everyone staring at her with scared looks on her face. A nurse at the reception desk then bent down and pressed an intercom button. Security, we have a Haruno on a rage again. Gotcha. Someone get that straight jacket and the tranquilizer darts, we got a code pink. Let's move. Well, Sakura seems to not have changed at all. She's as violent as always, Kurama said as he fanned Naruto's broken face with his wings. Ayame quickly took out a piece of cloth and wiped the blood from his face. Yeah, well, sometimes things never change, Ayame said. That's understatement in Sakura's case. Kurama then patted Naruto's face lightly before rearing back his paw and slapping the whisker-cheeked blonde heart across the face, leaving a large red print on it. Ah, damn it Kurama. Your claws are sharp as hell. Why'd you do that? He hissed as he suddenly sparked to life. Ayame was shocked beyond belief and could only stare in awe as she caught sight of a small wisp of steam coming from Naruto's face as it healed to perfect condition before her very eyes. Oi, Ayame-ne-chan, now that Sakura is out of the way and I won't die by a pummeling to the face. Are Ino, Choji and Shikamaru still here? Ayame shook her head to rid herself of the questions she had for Naruto about his healing and merely put it under one of his abilities he had as a mage. Well, those three are usually together at Choji's father's restaurant, so let's go there, Ayame said. Naruto and Kurama sniffed the air before shaking their heads. No, it's alright. We can find the way by ourselves. You should back to Ichiraku's and help Ji-chan. Me and Kurama want to explore on our own. Ayame paused as she was about to speak, but nodded. Alright, but you don't get lost. I don't think that's possible. Not when I can smell Ichiraku ramen a mile away, he joked. Ayame giggled and gave Naruto a small peck on the cheek. Welcome back home, Otudo, she said before walking off. Naruto touched his cheek.
Home. The word resounded through his head like thunder did in the sky. He laughed. Home, huh, I think that can work, he muttered before walking off as Kurama lay down atop his head. After sniffing the air multiple times to try and catch the scent of his three childhood friends, he finally caught the scent of barbecue, flowers and wood. The barbecue is probably Choji. Flowers are obviously Ino and the wood is probably Shikamaru since he spends so much time around a shugi board. He thought. The blonde and the red-furred cat then sped off and in a matter of minutes were in front of Akamichi's barbecue hut. Naruto sniffed as he smelt the scent of succulent meat that made his and Kurama's mouth drool. They slid the sliding door open and entered the eating establishment before looking around and he spotted the three people he was looking for. And then she was like Nua and I was like you huh, but then I went and told her if you don't have any feelings for a man for 20 years in the entirety of your life then you have to be a lesbian. Ino spoke. Ino's hair had grown out and part of it was lengthy enough to cover part of her right eye while her left eye, still a beautiful shade of sky blue, was visible for all to see. She wore a pair of silver earrings and wore a purple tank top over a fishnet shirt with a purple miniskirt and black sandals. She had filled out nicely and had a very voluptuous figure and bordering on D-cup breasts. Troublesome Ino. You're always gossiping, Shikamaru drawled out. Shikamaru hadn't really changed that much. He still looked the same except for the fact that he now wore the cloak of the Rune Knights on his back. A symbol for tactician was emblazoned on it in a deep blue color. Though he had the cloak, Shikamaru was shown to be wearing normal civilian garb which consisted of a dark gray shirt and black pants with black boots.
Choji was smiling as he cooked the beef before them and salivated.
Choji's appearance was the most different. Though he looked relatively the same in terms of physique, it was obvious that most of that fat he had when he was younger was probably muscle. His brown hair was much longer and spikier and the red swirls he had painted on the sides of his cheeks were a much darker shade of red. He wore a large red shirt and red pants with black boots. Atop his head was a chef's hat and an apron that said, "Kiss the cook."
Oi, Choji, you finished cooking that stuff yet? Almost done, Shikamaru, the rotund boy replied. Choji, Ino said. Choji looked up from the beef and at his two best friends. What? He smiled. That wasn't Shikamaru, she said. Choji tilted his head in confusion as he watched Shikamaru. Troublesome. It wasn't me, it came from behind us. The pineapple hairstyled Rune Knight shook his head before turning around. Ino and Choji followed his gaze. Suddenly, their eyes widened and mouths were slack, even Shikamaru's. Naruto leaned up against the bar counter with Kurama resting atop his head as he looked at the trio.
Yo. The two gave a small wave. Ino, being the active one, immediately sprung to her feet and slammed into the blonde boy, taking him and Kurama down in a hug. Naruto's face was immersed in her cleavage, not that he didn't mind, but he was using every ounce of willpower to hold back the nosebleed that was brewing on the horizon. Nice to see you too, Ino-chan. Naruto mumbled. Though, would you mind getting off? Your cleavage, while rather impressive, is killing me. Ino giggled with a blush as she rose up, now simply straddling the spiky-haired blonde. Naruto-kun, Kurama, you're back. When did you? How did you? She was so excited to see her childhood friends again that she couldn't even complete her sentences. Naruto laughed. We got back just today to see other people. As for how? We walked. Well, actually we flew here most of the way. Ino smiled at the spiky-haired blonde before flicking him on the forehead. You baka, and you couldn't see us first, saving the best for last, Ino-chan. He winked at her, causing her to grin wolfishly in return. Of course, she said, giving in to her vanity. So Naruto, Kurama, how have you been? Here, have some beef, I just made it. Choji said as he brought a plate of freshly cooked barbecue beef to the Dragonslayer and exceed. Ino climbed off of Naruto and helped him to his feet as Kurama still clung to the top of the blonde's head, stretching out his tail to pick up the plate of beef that lay before them. We've been fine, traveling around the kingdom of Fury. Gotta say, Fury is a rather active place, Kurama said as he downed multiple pieces of beef in one go. Naruto took up 2 pieces and tossed them into his mouth with his chopsticks and easily caught them, causing Ino and Choji to clap for them merely just to humor the two. You know Naruto, something seems different about you, Shikamaru said as he looked over the blonde. You seem powerful. Well, I am a mage after all, he said as he demonstrated a formation of a Rasengan.
Though he was laughing and smiling on the outside, Naruto's thoughts were in a different place.
Shikamaru is a rune knight and one of its tactician members it seems. I can't demonstrate too much, if any, of my ability to use Fuden. Despite his lazy attitude, I know his mind is as sharp as any wind blade I can form and he'd be able to piece it together that I am the Ogano Fujin and then by extension make Kurama the Anabi Myobu. Though Shikamaru is my nakama, I can't risk it. I can trust Shikamaru, but not the rune knight tactician Shikamaru Nara. A mage. That's incredible. Well, as you can tell by the cloak, Sheik is in the rune knights, maybe he can squeeze in a spot for you. Ino said. He's one of their best tacticians, the little genius like him. She patted Shikamaru on the head.
I noticed. Shikamaru. The rune knights don't suit a laid-back guy like you. How'd you get in? Wait, let me guess. Yoshino-san? Shikamaru sighed and nodded as Naruto answered his own question.
Yeah, Okawa-chan is a real pain in the ass, saying how that Two-san is going to retirement soon so I need to get into the business too. Ino is going into the interrogation unit pretty soon and Inoichi-san is Treuji is going to be working on being a tank member and being a heavy fighter rune knight.
So why is it that only you have your rune knight cloak with you? And all three of you are in the rune knights? Kurama exclaimed. A nod came from all three of them.
As for why we don't have ours, Choji and I don't like to wear ours in public and Shikamaru's mother is making him do it because she wants him to build a respectable image for himself as a rune knight. She laughed. As if it's possible for a lazy ass like Shika to gain such a reputation outside of HQ.
Troublesome Ka-chan. Shikamaru sighed. I just want to sleep and watch the clouds. So, what magic do you guys use? Naruto asked. Shika uses shadow magic. I use mind manipulation magic. And Choji uses body growth magic. Shika's is self-explanatory, he manipulates shadows, but he can even go so far as to control his shadow and latch it onto another person so as to prevent them from moving. My magic allows me to control people's bodies and even their minds. I can also manage to go into a person's subconscious so I can mentally pick them apart and even read their innermost thoughts. Choji's magic allows him to expand any part of his body so that he could grow bigger and crush the competition, Ino stated. We're the Ino-Shika-Cho trio of the next generation. I see. Naruto and Kurama spoke before looking at each other with frown. Three of their nakama were in the rune knights and now concealing their identities as the Ogono Fujin and the Onibi Myobu became that much more of a priority. Naruto and Kurama cursed inwardly. They didn't like lying to the people they held close to them, their precious people, their nakama. They would risk their lives for them and to protect them, and it was because of this that Naruto and Kurama would be forced to keep this from them. However, should they come too close to even figuring out anything relating us to our SS-class counterparts, Kurama paused in his thought. They could kill them easily, but it wasn't easy to kill someone you cared about. Naruto and Kurama released silent groans of frustration. Kuso. They muttered under their breaths. Ino had then called over Sakura, Ayame, Tuichi, Inoichi, Shuza, Shikaku, Yoshino and Seiko over to the barbecue restaurant so as to once again get the chance to talk with Naruto and Kurama. They ate, drank and talked the whole day before they all went back to their respective homes, but the common thing amongst them was that they were all glad to have the young Dragonslayer and Exceed back in their lives, no matter how short the stay was going to be. When the tipsy people all left, Naruto and Kurama were the only ones left standing outside the barbecue hut. So, what are we going to do? Naruto. Three of our nakama are part of the rune knights and one has the ability to break into your mind and pick you apart. One is a genius and the other has magic that can hold you down by simply bloating himself to unbelievable proportions. Kurama recollected the drunken Choji demonstrating his magic as he increased the size of his hand 3 times its original size. I. Naruto clutched his head as he racked his brain for an answer to the current predicament. After a few minutes, the young man sighed before his blue eyes suddenly flickered white. I'll crush them. My identity is the Ogono Fujin and yours as the Onibi Myobu. It is much too dangerous for it to be public knowledge. His eyes then changed back to blue, but I can't kill them. They're my nakama. I can't just kill them. I've known them for far too long, bonded with them, shared memories with them. I don't want to lose the only people I care about over something as trivial as an identity. Listen to yourself, Naruto. You're acting like a scared child. Acknowledgia raised you, me, us, to crush your emotions. Your nakama are humans that you despise. As a Dragonslayer, you're at the top of the hierarchy of the world. You're the dominant species. Naruto growled to himself, his eyes shifting back to blinding white. No, I can't. Naruto fell to the ground on his knees and released a loud roar to the heavens. Kurama watched in shock as he saw Naruto's eyes continue to go back and forth between blue and white, his slightly regained humanity fighting a losing battle against his Dragonslayer personality. I knew Naruto was forced into a warped mentality by Acknowledgia by locking away his humanity. But to have created a split personality as a result. Just what have you done, you overgrown garden snake? Kurama wondered. The red-eyed Exceed then watched as Naruto fell silent. His eyes now cold and calculating and ice blue. Have you reached a consensus, Naruto? Kurama asked. Naruto growled as he looked at Kurama. The people here are much too close to me to find out anything about me. It is best for me to leave this place. Our presence here puts everyone at risk, so we leave at first light, Kurama. My humanity returning to me has shown that I have not completely been turned by the draconian teachings of Tusan. I cannot stay here much longer as the release of my emotions has caused me too much mental trauma enough as it is. We will sleep for the night here in Clovertown and then we will leave. You're not even going to say goodbye. Goodbyes are unnecessary, Naruto said with a neutral tone. How are they unnecessary? You see them for the first time in 7 years and you're going to leave them again without even the courtesy of saying goodbye? Kurama exclaimed. Naruto snarled at the fox-costumed cat. Hold your tongue, Exceed. No, Dragonslayer. The two snarled at one another before Kurama spoke once more. I am just as hell-bent against humanity as you are, but at least I have the ability to tell when certain humans deserve my wrath and when certain ones do not. You're losing yourself, Naruto. You are a Dragonslayer, yes, but you are not a true-blooded dragon. Get it through your skull that you have humanity in you and that you will feel emotions, damn it. Naruto remained silent and looked down at the ground before chuckling and looking up at the moon as its silver rays shone down on him. His eyes shone with white before returning to their original color. It's a matter of opinion, Kurama. I am a Dragonslayer and I have been told that I am the epitome of perfection, the most powerful being on the face of Earthland. I can crush things before me with a mere flick of the wrist. I can sever heads, blow bodies apart, impale people through the heart and kill anything that stands in my way. But when it comes to my own problems, I'm as weak as any human. Naruto growled deeply in his throat.
I despise my human side. Naruto muttered darkly before he walked off. Kurama sighed and rested atop the blonde's head and patted his skull. Naruto jumped atop the roofs of the houses of Clover Town before settling atop the spire of Clover Town's highest building, which was the mansion of Ayame's stalker, Roy. Of course, Naruto and Kurama didn't know this was his house and were too caught up in their thoughts to recognize the scent. You'll come to make a choice soon, Naruto. You are a Dragonslayer and you are a human. You have the power of a dragon in the heart of a human. You can walk one road or the other, or maybe, you can always defy the laws of choice as you always have and forge your own path, but know this, Naruto. The blonde looked up at the Exceed on his head.
What? No matter what happens. No matter what you do. I'll be there to help you through it, alright? Naruto remained silent as Kurama finished speaking and merely patted the Exceed's head. Besides, someone has to stop you from eating so much ramen. You're going to die from all that shit in your body. A vein bulged on Naruto's forehead at that remark. Shut up, Baka Kitsune, Clovertown, Fury, year X 784. Do you understand why I did not wish to say goodbye now? Naruto growled. You're right. I'm sorry I wanted to see you be human and say goodbye before you left the people you didn't see since you were a child. Kurama spoke with a deadpan voice. Well, I told you that we should leave at first light and I made the conclusion that this would happen if we did say goodbye. Now look what happened. I'm never taking advice from you again, you mangy feline. Why not? Kurama spoke, feigning hurt feelings. Because it's been 3 days, because of you. We weren't able to leave this human-infested area as I originally planned. Naruto snarled, his eyes shifting to shining white. Oi, Naruto-kun. Why are you and Kurama whispering to each other? Come on, get up. Ayame called out from her side of the party table. Naruto sighed as he glared at Kurama atop his head. I will kill you, Exceed. Mark my words, I will have my claws tear your throat out. Shining white stared into deadly crimson with equal intensity. Shut up, Dragonslayer. Kurama retorted. Naruto's eyes shifted back to their original blue before he rose from his seat. Coming to Yame-ne-chan. Naruto said as he rose up from his chair. What did you want? He asked as he reached the brown-haired girl's position. I need you to cut the cake with me. Naruto stared blankly at her as he watched the birthday cake. But it's Sakura's birthday, why am I cutting it with you? Celebrations such as this dictate that the person who the party is for should be the one to cut it with another person. Is there something you're not telling me? Just how old are you, Ne-chan? He was then slapped playfully on the shoulder. Naruto-kun, I'm not old, she pouted, causing Naruto to chuckle at his older sister figure. By the way, where is Sakura? Naruto asked as he looked around for his childhood, pink-haired friend. Ahem. He heard the feminine voice of a certain pink-haired woman accompanied by the tap on his shoulder, causing him to spin around rather quickly, said action frightening the green-eyed girl. Yes, he asked with a curious tilt of his head. Well what? Where's my present? Naruto tilted his head once more at Sakura's question. I didn't get one. I've only been in town for 3 days, Sakura. I don't think I would have had the time to go out and purchase a gift for your birthday, seeing as how I aimed to surprise you all with my return to Clover Town. Though in that case, shouldn't my temporary return be a gift enough to you? Yes, but like you said, this is a temporary thing.
You could have at least gotten me something, she said with her arms folding over her chest, a disappointed look on her face. Besides, why are you leaving so soon?
Actually, we would all like to know the answer to that, Shikamaru said as he, Ino and Choji walked up to the blonde. Naruto noticed Ayame had joined the posse of people who wished to know his reasoning behind leaving Clover Town immediately after he had just arrived. Naruto looked up at Kurama and sent a glare his way, and the crimson-furred cat shrugged with a sheepish grin on his face.
My bad, he whispered. I am leaving because I wish to continue my travels. I was actually told to visit a place that is quite important within Fury.
Really, where is that? Choji asked. Naruto tapped his nose as he gave the brown-haired boy a sly grin. That's for me to know and you to find out. As Shikamaru would say, the game is afoot. I don't say that. The Rune Knight member scoffed. Ino and Choji shook their head at their fellow Rune Knight before patting Naruto on the shoulders.
Well, you'll be coming back soon. Right, Ino said with a small glare. If you don't, I'll find you. I am a Rune Knight now, so I have connections. Naruto frowned at his fellow blonde's threat, albeit it being playful in nature.
Trust me, Ino. You don't want to find out what Kurama and I really are. He thought. He then turned to Sakura and gave her a small smile.
Well, let's to cutting that cake, nay Sakura. The birthday girl seemed to brighten up at that and nodded. The group of 20-year-olds and one 27-year-old all sang the birthday song for Sakura as she was now turning 21. After blowing out the candles, she had Naruto cut the cake with her, and to the blonde's surprise, was given a kiss on the cheek for his help with the birthday party. Kurama was given the same. But I didn't do anything. They said. You came, didn't you? That's more than enough. Naruto looked at Kurama with shocked looks present on both their faces before glancing back at Sakura. You honestly deserve more than us leaving, Sakura. Kurama said. Naruto didn't say anything as he gained an impassive look and glanced out of the window of Sakura's apartment. The sun was hanging in the sky, shining brightly, indicating it was around midday. Well, then we should enjoy the day while it still lasts. You can stay for just one more day, can't you? Sakura asked. Naruto turned and glared at Sakura. I would rather not. This particular journey I am going to embark upon is of the utmost importance to me. He then looked to see Sakura was giving the puppy dog eyes, her irises growing immensely large and moist, and performed some sort of weird wobbling motion. What the hell is that? Naruto backed up in surprise. What is going on? Please, Naruto-kun. Son of a bitch. My will to deny, my will to say no. Why is it crumbling? Naruto thought as he fell to his knees and looked up at the pink-haired girl. By the dragon, Sakura, what have you done to me? What the hell is that thing you're doing with your eyes? Make it stop. It's so agonizingly cute. The cuteness, it boo-ur-arns. Naruto curled up into a ball, shutting his eyes to stop looking at the green eyes of doom.
Then will you stay? She asked in that sickeningly sweet tone of voice. Naruto shuddered as he slowly nodded his head.
Yes, I'll stay. Just make those eyes go away. Naruto said as he moved away from Sakura's freaky, wobbling eyes. Sakura then blinked and the puppy dog eyes vanished. Great, now come on, it's eating time. Cheesecake for the win. Everyone's sweat dropped at the 21-year-old that acted like a child as she cut out a piece of her birthday cake. As everyone took a slice of cake, Kurama decided to ruin anyone's chances of getting more than one slice, including Sakura. Bonsai. The exceed leapt from atop Naruto's head and belly flopped onto the pink icing-covered cake with a humorous-sounding splat. The cake seemed to somehow deflate as it was crushed beneath Kurama's weight. Well, there goes the cake. You have ice cream though, right? Choji asked as he looked at Sakura with hopeful eyes. Sakura stuck her tongue out, a habit she had picked up on from her mother when she was nervous. Hehe, what would you do if I said no? Probably crawl in a hole and die and curse the gods as to why Sakura Haruno does not have backup ice cream at her own birthday party. Why? The rotund man asked. Sakura facepalmed before just walking over to her pile of presents. Let's just open the presents. She sighed. A loud belch filled the atmosphere, causing everyone to look with disgust at the crimson-furred cat. The fox-costumed feline was licking the remains of the pink icing from his lips while laying on his back on the plate where the cake used to be. They then turned back to Sakura as she began to open her presents. Ino got her a beautiful vase of pink roses. Shikamaru and Choji, well mostly Choji, got her a cookbook, something she desperately needed since she had been buying takeout food for most of the time she was at medical school. Ayame had gotten her a pretty pair of cherry blossom-shaped earrings and also handed her the present that Seiko was to give her daughter. Sakura opened the box to reveal a small music box. She opened the box and her eyes widened as she heard the tune coming out of it. Insert music. Naruto Yutsusemi. Quite an interesting tune. Yutsusemi by Toshiro Masuda is a beautiful piece. Ino commented.
It's the same tune we all used to listen to as kids. Really gives you a feeling of nostalgia, doesn't it? Choji chuckled. The group all sat down around Sakura as she held the music box and the music continued to play. Sakura gave a sad smile. Tears lighting her eyes. She looked up at all of her friends.
Thank you, all of you, for coming. Sakura said. They all grinned in response, except for Naruto and Kurama who looked down with a guilty look on their faces. It's no trouble, Sakura. We're your friends no matter what. Ino told her best friend. Sakura nodded before turning to Naruto and Kurama. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer and the Exceed continued to look down as Sakura walked over to them.
Hey, don't feel guilty over this. You guys had to do what had to do, just like we had to do what we had to do.
I'm stuck at medical school. Ino, Choji and Shikamaru have their jobs as rune knights and Ayame is working with Toichi at Ichiraku's. To be honest, we've actually been thrusting the guilt of you leaving on you without even realizing it, but it just shows how hypocritical we are.
We want you to stay and spend time with all of us now that you are back with us, Naruto, Kurama. However, the thing is that we won't be able to hang out even if you were to stay here in Clovertown. We'd be too busy working and the only person you'd see is probably Toichi, Ayame and my Ka-chan. Sakura then leaned down and hugged Naruto. The blonde didn't respond and neither did Kurama as he was scratched behind his ears. Now it wasn't just Naruto and Kurama who felt guilty. Everyone present in the room looked down as they felt a few tugs on their heartstrings. True, they had wanted Naruto to stay with them now that he was back, but they had forgotten to take into account the fact that they all had jobs to do and Naruto and Kurama were just simple wanderers with no actual home to stay in. Sure, he stayed with Toichi and Ayame for the 3 days he had been guilt-tripped into staying for that time to wait to leave until Sakura's birthday passed, but… Go! As Ayame said that one word, everyone's heads snapped up. You really aren't meant to stay here, Naruto-kun. Ayame ne-chan. Naruto whispered. This is for the best then, Shikamaru said. Naruto and Kurama's heads turned to the black-haired boy. Huh? Naruto, I told you this before when we were 13. You aren't going to be the type to stay here for long. You aren't really meant to stay in one place for the rest of your life. I mean, look at you. You're a mage who wanders throughout Fury and I highly doubt that you would have more of a life here in Clover than out there in the real world. Though I should warn you, if you cause any trouble, Ino's not going to be happy and she may actually hurt you. He joked. Naruto and Kurama blinked, shaking their heads in disbelief. You all. Naruto climbed to his feet before walking forward and placing his fist against his chest, his heart to be specific. I. Naruto clutched his head as his emotions suddenly began to fluctuate. His head snapped upwards, eyes shining white. His friends backed up in shock as they felt Naruto's magical energy suddenly spike. Naruto panted heavily, his claw-like nails and sharpened teeth visible to all. His eyes were now a shining white. Naruto growled at the people before him and Kurama quickly jumped off of Naruto's head. Naruto, snap out of it. Don't let it control you, Kurama exclaimed. Naruto snarled at the Exceed before aiming to slash at Kurama, but the Exceed dodged it before shadows suddenly sprung out of the ground and bound Naruto. Naruto, what's gotten into you? Shikamaru said. Sakura and Ayame watched as their magically powered friends aimed to restrain Naruto. Choji used his Titan magic to increase the size of his hand in aid in forcing Naruto down to the ground. Naruto snarled as he pushed upwards against the giant hand. He easily broke free of its grip before he inhaled deeply and Shikamaru, Choji and Ino watched in amazement as Naruto literally absorbed the magic from Shikamaru's spell before the shadows seemed to dissolve into nothingness. Disgusting humans. I'll kill you all. You dare exist in this world and attempt to use magic against one who is above all. Die. Naruto raised his claws as wind suddenly appeared out of nowhere and Naruto's magic spiked once more. However, as Naruto was about to strike with the powers of the wind, he froze. The magic spike dropped and everyone looked as Naruto clutched his head once more, falling to his knees. He panted as he looked up at his friends, eyes now their original shade of blue. Naruto, what was? Ino was stopped when she saw Naruto rise to his feet and punch the wall of Sakura's apartment, making a decent-sized hole in it. Naruto stared at them all with a cold look in his eyes. The blonde sighed as he gritted his teeth. Damn it, I can't control myself. Ayame-ne-chan, you had no idea how right you were when you said I really am not meant to stay here. My powers are something not meant for humans to bear witness to. You're merely lucky that I did not kill you. You mean you really would have? Sakura asked. Naruto gave a regretful nod. He then clutched his forehead in pain. I'm sorry, but my leaving is going to be now. Naruto, wait, we can help you. If it's magic then we can help, the Rune Knights can help. No, not the Rune Knights. Naruto's eyes changed back to their blinding white. Those pathetic maggots will be nothing but victims to my hands. Do not take me, do not attempt to find me, do not attempt to help me. Naruto then gave a dark chuckle. You are all lucky this pathetic human part is restraining me from killing you all. Naruto's eyes then changed back to blue. I'm not staying here with you. I am not hurting my nakama, not ever. Kurama, come on. Naruto quickly sped out the door at a speed no one other than Kurama could have followed at. A sonic boom then sounded as both Dragonslayer and Exceed left the premises. The group all stared at the area where Kurama and Naruto had previously been. What the hell just happened? Ino asked. Sakura and Ayame fell to their knees as the fear and lack of adrenaline finally caught up with them. Was that really Naruto-kun? That couldn't be my Naruto-kun. That was not my Otuto. Ayame cried out as tears spilled from her eyes. Shikamaru and Choji looked at each other. We need to report to headquarters. No way, Shika. Naruto is our friend. There's no way we're going to put him on the criminals listing. Ino glared at him. Ayame and Sakura's eyes widened at Ino's exclamation. Ayame dragged herself on her knees to Shikamaru, gripping his pant leg. No, Shikamaru, please, don't do this to my Otuto. Don't make him a criminal. Please. Ayame clutched his pant leg with enough force that one could actually hear the fabric beginning to tear. Shikamaru's eyes narrowed as his brain worked a mile a minute. Do you all really think so lowly of me that you think I would that to Naruto, our friend? Ino cringed at the venom Shikamaru put into his tone as his dark-colored eyes bore into her cerulean ones. Shikamaru sighed as he began scratching his head and thought. This is so troublesome. That darker personality of his. There's something about it that just seems so evil, vile, putrid. Stop me anytime now, Shika. Choji said as he rattled off words. Shikamaru shook his head. No, it's not that. It wasn't evil at all. It seemed more like dangerously powerful. Anyway, Ino, when I said we need to report to headquarters, I meant that we need to set up a private investigation. This is a private matter that only we, the three of us, will deal. We need resources, so we're going to the Magic Council HQ, and whatever it is that's possessing Naruto or causing him to act this way, we're going to help him get through with it. You two go back. I'll stay here with Ayame and Sakura. They're pretty shaken up, Ino said. Possession? No, there was no foreign magic source. That also rules out being infiv black magic exposure, so the only logical explanation is Naruto is either suffering from some sort of post-traumatic stress disorder or he has a split personality.
As for the magic, it was powerful and the wind kicked up as he did so. Whatever magic Naruto is hiding from us, it's no doubt extremely powerful if the pressure created from it was that strong. I'm going to have to look into this. Naruto, what happened to you while you were gone? Shikamaru then looked up when he felt someone shake him. He looked to see Choji looking at him with concerned looks. You okay? Choji asked his best friend. Shikamaru nodded. Yeah, sorry. Just lost in thought. It was understandable. After all, their childhood friend just had a split personality episode right in front of them and threatened to kill them. A magic seal then sprung up beneath the two male Rune Knight members, performing a small requip magic spell to change into their professional garb. Teleportation magic. Magic Council HQ. They yelled as they vanished in a pillar of purple light, teleporting to the Magic Council HQ.
Eastern Fiorian Mountains. Agnologia's lair. Naruto skidded as he landed on the ground and stumbled into the darkness of the cave. He growled as his eyes flickered between white and blue. He released a powerful roar imbued with magic energy that caused the ceiling of the large cave to shake and crack. Numerous stalagmites fell from above, things Naruto used to vent the draconian rage he had running through his system as he sliced them to rubble with the sharp winds he created. He then turned around and froze as he saw Kurama standing there. The fox-costumed Exceed watched with a blank look at his partner, and the Dragonslayer merely snarled at him. Finished? Kurama asked. Naruto's face seemed to calm and he made no motion whatsoever. Kurama's eyes narrowed before they widened in shock. In a flash of crimson, Kurama transformed into his Kitsune form. 5 whip-like tails dug themselves into the ground as the bipedal Kitsune caught the punch that Naruto aimed for his chest. Naruto continued to rain down blows upon the transformed Exceed, but the Biju blocked them all. Unlike in other battles, Naruto's Dragonslayer usage was not in conjunction with his actual intelligence, and so he was striking out with pure instinct and animalistic rage. An angry mind is a narrow mind, Naruto. That was one of the first lessons Agnologia taught you. Kurama spoke as he continued to block Naruto's attacks, which served to only further Naruto's anger. Agnologia understood that your draconian side was empowered by the intelligence you used alongside it and was what made you the one of the most deadly forces on the face of this continent. Kurama frowned as he quickly caught Naruto's wrist as he aimed to slash his face before twisting and thrusting the side of his hip against Naruto's own. Using the force of the thrust, he channeled it to pull Naruto off of the ground and threw Naruto over his shoulder and into the ground. You are still strong, Naruto. But this side of you is not who you really are. Like you would know anything, Exceed. You underestimate the power of a dragon. Naruto vanished into the wind before reappearing above Kurama's head. Kurama didn't move as his tails lashed out and wrapped around Naruto's ankles, wrists and neck. The white-eyed Dragonslayer roared, tearing the earth with the shockwave it generated, but Kurama remained in place. The Kitsune snarled before slamming Naruto into the ground. Shut up and calm down. Do not make me angry, Naruto. You know very well I can handle you, so either calm down or I make you. Kurama roared. Naruto panted in exertion as he tried to force his way to his feet, But Kurama had lengthened his tails and embedded them into the earth to anchor Naruto, and so the Apocalypse Dragonslayer was nothing more than a motionless man. Naruto roared in rage, the earth cracking once more as magic was expelled from his body. But Kurama countered by expelling fire from his body. Pure magic and flame collided before they both vanished as a result of their stalemate. A few moments passed as Naruto didn't move for a few minutes. "Are you ready to get up?" Kurama asked. Naruto sighed and nodded his head. Kurama nodded and unearthed his tails before raising the bound Naruto to his feet. The blonde's eyes returned to their original blue color before he was gently rested on the ground. Kurama changed back into his original form and rested atop Naruto's head. "You had an episode," he stated. Naruto nodded, rubbing the sides of his temples. "This dual personality will be the death of me if I do not find a way to either find balance between them or to choose one or the other. My draconian side is too violent and my human half, what I am right now, is much too lenient due to being relatively childlike. My human half is slowly adapting to my age though, seeing as how in a matter of 3 days I have nearly reached the intellect comparable to that of a person of my physical age. Will you ever find the time to do so?" the crimson-eyed cat asked. "I will try to, but I have a request to fulfill," the Dragonslayer replied before bending his knees and taking off into the sky. A crack in the ground resulting from his liftoff. A sonic boom followed behind him as he took off in a northern direction. Naruto closed his eyes as he recalled the situation that led to him heading north. Flashback: Eastern Fiorian Mountains, Agnologia's lair. 1 month ago. "How's the arm?" Kurama asked as he brought back a pair of dead quails from his daily hunt for lunch. Naruto lay upon the ground in his old sleeping spot, scowling as he raised his damaged arm before wincing. "Less than satisfactory. That fairy tale mage broke my shoulder and caused lengthy fractures along the length of my radius and humerus. If I ever have the pleasure of meeting that spiteful human again I will. Yeah, rip his throat out, tear out his bowels and rip the rest of his body to shreds. I've heard the whole story every time you bitch about your little draw with Gildart's Clive of fairy tale. Now can you be quiet? I need to cook these things." He pointed to the dead quails in his hand like paws. Naruto bared his sharp teeth at Kurama, but the cosplaying cat didn't even spare the Dragonslayer a glance.
Naruto decided to rest his eyes as he suddenly began to feel very drowsy as he stared at the crimson flames of Kurama's cooking fire. His eyelids became heavy, shifting between open and closed before they finally settled on being closed. Darkness enveloped his vision. "Oi, Naru-kun, wake up." Naruto's eyes snapped open. His blue eyes shifted all around the area he was in. He rose up to a sitting position before spying the image of the 5-point elemental seal. His eyes narrowed as he turned to face the spirits of his biological parents, Minato Namikaze, the Kiroi Senko, and Kushina Uzumaki, the Chishio no Habanero. "What reason do you have for bringing me within my mindscape? I do not wish to interact with either of you in any way, let alone speak with you." The blonde snarled. Minato frowned alongside Kushina. Ma, Naru-kun, so mean to your own Ka-chan. I have no Ka-chan and my Tu-san is not this man that stands before me. Not even in spirit will I recognize you as my Tu-san, Minato Namikaze. The two spirits flinched at his words, but Kushina rebutted his comment. "That is not what it sounded like when we first met you here in the seal. When we forced you to wake up you called us Tu-chan and Ka-chan.
I did no such thing." "Denial," the Dragonslayer's parents stated. Naruto snarled in annoyance. He then focused on freeing himself from his mindscape, but he was suddenly stopped when Minato forced him down to the ground. "What the? How dare you, you vile human, release me before I make you." "Naruto, listen to us, please. We want to atone for the sin of leaving you alone, for leaving you to be raised at the hands of the beast that killed us, but if you don't give us a chance to talk to you, we will never have the opportunity. Let us speak with you. What we have to say is important." Naruto stared blankly at his biological father before glancing at his mother. Kushina sent a nod his way and the younger blonde turned back to his father. "Your words hold significance and due to being within my own mind, I am able to sense no lies being uttered from you. I will listen, but..." Naruto's eyes shone a bright white as a pulse of magic threw his father off of him before he impaled the spirit through its body. Minato grunted in pain as his spiritual form felt the pain of having a clawed hand being thrust through its stomach. "Attack me again and I don't care how long it will take. I will find some way to remove your spirits from the seal." "Understood, Naru-kun," Kushina said. Naruto forcefully pulled his hand free from Minato's body and the symbol of the seal glowed crimson as Minato's spirit was regenerated. "Now speak, Minato and Kushina." "Naru-kun, first off, as we discussed before, we are very proud of how strong you have become under Agnologia's tutelage, however." Kushina paused. "We are not happy with the way you are carrying about yourself. You see yourself as above all others due to your status as the Apocalypse Dragonslayer and son of a dragon. You do not see yourself as human and it is what is resulting in your eventual mental collapse," Minato said. "Your opinion of me does not matter. Also, my mental state is quite intact." "That's what you think, but look." Kushina and Minato snapped their fingers, and as the sound echoed throughout the recesses of Naruto's mindscape, a golden scale appeared between the three. One end of the scale was the miniature form of a 13-year-old Naruto, while on the other end of the scale was an image of Agnologia's sleeping form. The two sides of the scale were shifting and up and down at a very rapid pace, not even settling on either side or finding equilibrium. "What is this?" the Dragonslayer asked. "This is representation of your psyche. On one end, you have your human side, the side you have been repressing for years since you completed your Dragonslayer training under Agnologia's tutelage. However, your intellect is the only form of your human side that you let out," Minato started. "While this other end represents the side you tend to lean towards, your draconian side, or Dragonslayer personality as we like to call it. Your Dragonslayer side is majorly dominant, but the use of your human intellect as well as interaction with people like Haku and Minerva from Lupinus Town have resulted in your emotions fluctuating and causing pieces of your psyche to degenerate. As a result, if you are placed under a certain amount of emotional stress, your mind will snap and result in the formation of a split personality between your two natures. Your Dragonslayer form has been exceedingly powerful so far due to your human mind guiding your rage and preventing it from truly clouding your mind, but if you split it from your humanity, your Dragonslayer half will continuously try to gain dominance and result in split personality episodes. Worst case scenario could be that your mind will undergo so much stress due to these episodes that you will break down and regress into a vegetative state or succumb to insanity," Kushina explained. Naruto's eyes widened as he looked at the scales and their moving sides. He continued to stare at it for a few seconds before his eye narrowed. "You are my biological parents, so your concern for me is understandable. However, I assure you my psyche is completely intact and will remain so. No amount of emotional stress will result in this scenario occurring." Kushina and Minato frowned at their son's stubborn nature, but then again, he was their son. Even if Agnologia raised him, that stubborn attitude was within their own personalities as well, so it was only natural that Naruto would pick it up as well. "Is that all you wished to tell me?" Naruto asked. "If so, I will take my leave." "Actually, it's not. You see, other than that warning we issued you, we also have another reason for calling you here." Naruto sighed, his frustration being exceedingly paramount. "I don't have to listen to this, but you know you want to," Minato argued. Naruto did not answer. "Naruto, first off, we wish to apologize for the fact that we died when you were only a year old, but we are your parents. We need to put your safety above all else, even our own lives. You placed a protective seal upon my body while you fought the overgrown garden snake." Naruto snarled. "Why didn't you do the same for yourselves?" he roared. "Because, we wouldn't have had the time or the magic to make 3 of those types of seals. Agnologia relentlessly attacked us and you have studied seal magic, Naruto. You know how complex the seal we placed on you is," the older blonde yelled back. "Bullshit." The Apocalypse Dragonslayer stamped his foot on the ground and a gust of wind blew forth as if to personify his rage. "You are both masters of that field of magic. You could have done it at any time. Naru-kun, we may be wizard saints, but we are not gods, or dragons if you prefer that to be a suitable comparison. We are still human and in the rush to protect your life, we neglected our own. Like I said, we are your parents and your safety is paramount," the red-haired woman said. Naruto opened his mouth to argue, but his mind drew a blank at any form of a rebuttal. He snarled before opening his mouth once more, but no words escaped his voice box. "Idiotic humans," he snarled under his breath. "We truly are sorry for dying on you, Naruto, but..." Minato's eyes hardened. "We do not regret what we did. You survived and that is what we had aimed to do. You lived to see another day and so in our eyes, we did not die in vain. You carry on our legacies, Naruto. You wield my energy make with better skills than I could ever hope to achieve. You hold your mother's blades, Excalibur and Ascalon, and you are also a user of seal magic. If I didn't know any better, I would say you are proud of us and that we are your parents, that we are the ones who were able to have you able to learn the magics that you know now. I hold you both in high regard. Not because you are my biological parents, but because you are able to stand against Agnologia and because of your titles as wizard saints, nothing more. You are impressive for humans and I respect you both, but never will I be able to say that I am proud that you two are my parents. If anything, I am saddened that you both could not find the common sense to run from Agnologia. You possess the ability to move at high speeds, Minato, you could have saved yourselves as well as me if you had done so. In my eyes, you abandoned me and there will be nothing you can do or say to make me forgive you." Naruto spat out with venom in his tone. "Then we will do what we can to make sure you can find your humanity and forgive us for placing you with the feeling that we had abandoned you. Databane?" Kushina grinned widely. Minato's sweat dropped at his wife's verbal tick. "Still with the datbane, huh? Shut up, Minato-kun." Kushina punched him in the head. Naruto raised an eyebrow at his parents as he watched Kushina rant to his biological father before Kushina turned back to him. "Now Naru-kun. One more note before we wake you up. Naruto, you were born in a populated village near to the area where Agnologia made his nest in the cave and raised you. Journey north from there and you will find your home village.
However, the village was in a war between the lizard men, the creatures that tried to kidnap you so that they could use you against us or kill you. The battle was that over territory in which the lizard men had ruled over the forests for ages, but when we humans created our large village over the years, they saw it fit to remove us from their territory. Another foolish choice by humans. Animals, even those that are capable of cognitive thinking such as the lizard men, bear the instinct to keep intruders out of their territory.
Minato ignored his son's comment before Kant fell due to it lacking sufficient mages, and the lizard men were much better at close combat. Not to mention they had the ability to copy a single type of magic to use as their own.
I know of these creatures. Quite intelligent and very intuitive in battle. Minato nodded at Naruto's statement.
Yes, and it was because of that, alongside the fact that their numbers far outmatched our own, and as a result the village was lost to us and burned to the ground. We were forced to run off with you as the remaining factions of the Lizardman army that we failed to kill gave chase.
Is there a point to you telling me about my alleged hometown? Naruto asked.
Yes. You see, within the ashes of the town I managed to protect a few valuables in a chest which was guarded by seals that not even lizardmen could open, even if they managed to copy seal magic. Inside that chest will be information regarding anything you wish to know regarding my and your Ka-chan's family history, as well as a few things you wouldn't have known about your own.
Naruto's eyes narrowed at that last statement. Silence reigned within the Dragonslayer's mindscape before he turned away and punched the air of his mindscape, only to hit something solid. The air seemed to shatter like glass, revealing the darkness within it. As Naruto stepped into the makeshift tunnel that led from his mindscape, his ears twitched as he picked up on his mother's voice.
Naru-kun. Kushina reached out to him, only for Minato to shake his head as he held her wrist.
No. Our son needs to make his own choices. We said what needed to be said, now all we can do is just watch and hope he does the right thing. Minato said. Naruto paused for a while longer as the words processed within his mind. Without a word, he left his mindscape and the spirits of his biological parents behind.
End flashback. Naruto clenched his fists before he took on a larger burst of speed. I can't believe I'm actually going through with this. Am I really that curious about my own family? Naruto shook his head to calm the myriad of thoughts going through his brain before pausing in midair. Something wrong? Kurama asked. Naruto rubbed his temples before shaking his head. No, just that we've arrived at our location, he replied. The Exceed looked around at the wide array of greenery.
There is nothing here, Gaki. You doubt the eyes of a dragon, Exceed. Naruto snarled as he stared at the forest. He then took off and Kurama's eyes widened as he saw the air seem to liquefy around him. Naruto and Kurama went through the invisible barrier that disguised the area of forest, only to reveal. By the dragons. Naruto muttered. His eyes still shone white, signifying his draconian half was still in control, but even this side of him could not help but stare in awe at the ruins that lay before him. Collapsed infrastructure, brick, stone and dirt were scattered throughout the area. Some areas were blackened from what seemed to be fire and the earth itself was broken apart. Craters littered the area in various places.
Naruto landed on the ground and his white eyes scanned the area. He took a few steps forward only to hear a snap beneath his boot. He looked down and stared at the human skull he just crushed. It was small. A child, he presumed. He then looked to see a sword was impaled through the skeleton's ribcage and next to it was the broken skeleton of a reptilian creature coated in armor. The lizard men. The blonde's eyes narrowed as he stared at the pair of skeletons for a few more moments. What the hell happened here? Kurama asked. War happened. Naruto stated with no emotion in his voice. His white eyes scanned the area and he could see the residual magic energy that was left behind. Even after 19 years of being reduced to rubble, the village still bore the signs of its battle within the atmosphere. Naruto inhaled and took in the Eternano and ingested it. The Mokushiryu no Byakugan continued to observe the village's ruins before he noticed a hotspot of magic energy. He walked towards that area before kneeling down and blowing a crater in the ground with a futon, Daitapa. Naruto reached into the crater and heaved out the dirty metal chest. Naruto. How did you know about this? The village, this chest? A little reunion with the spirits of my biological parents within my mindscape. They enlightened me to what transpired within the village that was supposed to be my hometown. This is all that is left. Minato and Kushina informed me of the location of this chest, which is said to contain any information regarding their family histories as well as a few things about my own. But wouldn't your family pertain to their own family histories as well? I assumed that as well, Exceed. But my human half suspects something else. Naruto growled out as he clutched his head. The shining white vanished and sapphire irises flickered into view. My head hurts. Damn it, Naruto panted as he felt the headache coming on. Despite the seal on his body granting him a healing factor, there was just something wrong that the seal refused to heal his migraine. My brain feels like it's burning. What the hell is happening to me? He mentally shouted. Naruto panted, a few beads of sweat dripping down his face as the burning sensation stopped. He rested his hand on the chest. but a variety of violet seals appeared and Naruto was suddenly sent flying back as a pulse of magic slammed into him. Naruto flipped in mid-air as Kurama sprouted his wings and hovered next to him. Minato truly took precautions when it came to protecting this chest, didn't he? Kurama said. Shut up, Kurama. Naruto drawled out. Naruto quickly formed a few hand motions before the pocket dimension opened to his right and he reached into it, pulling out his magic pen that he used to write his more complex seals. He quickly forced a bit of magic into the seals that appeared on the chest and his magic navigated its way through the crevices within the seal formula's magical composition. Intersecting triple pentagram seals coupled with barrier locks and chain defensive seals. Minato really knew what he was doing when made this. Naruto thought. He quickly withdrew his magic energy before drawing out numerous seal formulas atop the chest. Within a matter of minutes, he finished his creation and then placed his hand atop the sealing formula.
Seal magic. Enzyme substrate releasing formula. He said as he pumped magic energy into his formula. Suddenly, his own kanji flew across the chest, morphing themselves into different shapes and connecting to the ones on Minato's sealing formula as if they were pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. When all the kanji were connected, the seal glowed a deep violet before it vanished into thin air.
Did you break it? Kurama asked. Yes. I created a sealing formula similar to that of a biological enzyme when it bonds to a substrate. Each sealing kanji I created was to be attached to a specific part of the sealing formula within Minato's own. As they connected to each other, they broke down, similar to that of the catalytic breakdown of molecules within the human body and thus releasing any locks and barriers on the chest. I will admit, the man was a genius to come up with such a formula. Naruto complimented his father. Kurama blinked at the blue-eyed blonde. You do know I have absolutely no understanding of the seal you just did and what the hell you just said to explain it. Naruto's eyes narrowed at the exceed. Baka. Kurama flipped Naruto off in response to the insult. Naruto rolled his eyes before opening the chest. Within it were various files and documents. Most of them labeled uzumaki and namikaze. Naruto guessed those were the ones pertaining to the family history. Other documents were sealing formulas, secret techniques that they had created, but never tested. Finally, Naruto came to the bottom of the chest and his eyes widened as he saw a large black book. He pulled it out and blew off the dust before looking at the cover. Photo album? He looked at the book with a questioningly opening it.
Kurama rested atop his head before looking in awe as he saw the various images of Minato and Kushina. One was of a younger Minato and Kushina, probably when they were dating as they looked like teenagers in the picture. Another was with them holding up the peace sign, their wizard saint medallions held in their other hands, matching grins on their faces. A third picture showed a picture of Kushina's hand with a silver engagement ring on it. Naruto flipped through the pages as he saw various photos of his parents' wedding before stopping on the photo of a pregnant Kushina, looking down lovingly at the noticeable bump in her belly. Minato wasn't present so it was assumed he was the one who took the picture. This must be when she was pregnant with you. Kurama said. Naruto didn't respond as he turned the page, seeing pictures of his biological father holding up a various amount of toys. His eyes zeroed in on a small toy drum with 2 strings attached to either side, a small wooden, black ball attached to said strings. He looked at the writing below the pictures, something he now took notice of.
Naruto-kun's favorite toy, he read. He turned and picked up the small little drum he found within the chest and twisted it in his hands. The beads beat on either side of the drum and for some odd reason he felt a sense of calm when he did so. Naruto chuckled as he continued to play with the little toy. I can't believe this was my favorite toy. Why? Kurama asked. Because the sound it is making annoys the hell out of me, he responded. Kurama's sweat dropped at the Apocalypse Dragonslayer. Way to be blunt, Gaki. Naruto ignored the kitsune costumed cat and turned back to the photo album. He continued to turn the pages and stopped at the image of his father hugging his mother, his baby self being held up by his mother. Minato wore a large grin on his face as Kushina had a serene look on hers as she looked at the baby Naruto. Family. Naruto muttered the title of the picture. Kurama watched with a concerned look as Naruto watched the picture with an unblinking gaze. Kurama, not wanting Naruto to have another psychotic break, pulled the book away from the blonde. Naruto's eyes blinked rapidly as he registered what occurred. Kurama, Naruto, you may suffer another psychotic break and revert to your Dragonslayer state if you continue to watch this photo album. I don't want to risk it so. Kurama held the book in the air with one paw before he stared intently at it. Suddenly, the book burst into flames. Naruto's eyes widened as he watched the burning photo album fall on the ground. No, he quickly called upon the powers of his magic. Fudon, Shinku, wind style, vacuum. Kurama stared in shock as he watched the flames he made suddenly vanish as the oxygen was completely removed from the area where they burned so as to prevent the flames from further damaging the book. When the flames vanished it revealed the slightly charred book. He was then punched to the ground and kicked away as Naruto grabbed the book and inspected it. Naruto, what are you? What the hell are you doing? This is the only link I have to my past and you try to burn it? You could go into another personality shift. Your emotions fluctuate and you result in another psychological war with yourself. I wasn't going to risk that. And you didn't think that maybe burning this photo album would have done the same?
Since when the hell are you so defensive? Don't tell me you actually want to see those pictures. Naruto paused as held the book that much tighter, glancing down at the ground. Kurama's eyes widened in realization and shock as he watched the blank look on Naruto's face before the blonde Dragonslayer turned away from him. You really wanted to look at those pictures, didn't you, Naruto? Naruto didn't reply as he sat down once more and flipped through the pages. Some of the pictures were now blackened by Kurama's flames, but Naruto was still able to make out most of the images. Kurama lay there, staring at his partner with the shocked expression still on his face before he released a mental laugh.
Seems he's begun to accept his humanity a bit more. A few minutes later, Kurama gained a curious look when he saw Naruto had reached the last page of the book. The blonde stared in awe at the picture and Kurama flew over to the blonde. Naruto, what's going? Oh, Kurama's own expression of awe formed on his face. Naruto's hands trembled as he watched the picture before his shocked visage turned to that of rage. Impossible. There is no fucking way that is possible. Naruto. Kurama, no, there is no logical explanation to explain why that photo exists. Naruto tore photo out and stared intently at it. I refuse to accept it. She should not exist then if she were to have been born. She would have burned with the rest of this village. Naruto swept his arm in a wide arc, gesturing to the village ruins. Naruto released a roar of rage and tore the earth apart as a pulse of magic energy personified his rage. A gust of wind exited his jaws and the son of Agnologia breathed heavily, his anger emanating off of him. He quickly opened a pocket dimension and threw everything back into the chest before throwing the chest itself into the pocket dimension portal. The portal closed and Naruto clutched the photo he tore out within his hands before shredding it with the winds. Naruto was about to vent his rage further when he received a magic pulse from his cloak. He paused and took out the communication seal tag before pumping a small amount of magic into it. What? Oi, Fujin. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he heard the disrespectful tone one could only find in Gajeel Red Fox. Gajeel-san, Juvia thinks it is not wise to speak to the Ogono Fujin in such a disrespectful manner. Juvia fears being placed in pain again and Juvia does not like the pain. Juvia spoke. What do you want, Iron Dragon, Water Dragon? Now is not the best time for you to have contacted me, he snarled. Yeah, well too bad. Anyway, seeing as how you wanted updates on Master Jose's progress with the guild war he plans to start with Fairy Tail, Juvia and I are here to tell you that the master has almost finished his preparations. Naruto's eyes widened. Is he now? Yes, Fujin-san. Juvia and Gajeel-san are confident that Master Jose plans to attack within the next few weeks. He is currently mobilizing the guild to prepare for attack. Gajeel-san is tasked with attacking the guild itself. Master Jose hopes that by doing so, it will spark the fires of rage within Fairy Tail and thus lead to them starting the war with us. Juvia spoke. You have both done well. I appreciate that you have willingly followed my orders. Well, it's kind of hard to defy you when you have these fucking seals on our stomachs, the son of Metallicana grunted in annoyance. Your dissatisfaction is understandable, but until you prove that you are indeed trustworthy to me, I will keep those seals upon you. Water Dragon. He called out the title he had thrusted upon the blue-haired Dragonslayer. Yes, Fujin-san. The daughter of Levia spoke. What is the catalyst that will result in causing the war? Fujin-san, it is as Juvia said. Master Jose plans to have Gajeel-san. Naruto interrupted the blue-haired woman swiftly. I am aware of that, however, Makarov Drayar is not the type of person who will go to war over a simple breaking of his guild. What is his secondary method? Naruto asked. Juvia and Gajeel were silent for a few moments before an audible gulp was heard from the umbrella-holding woman. Juvia does not approve of this method of provocation, but Master Jose plans to attack a Fairy Tail member or members should the initial plan to cause the war not produce the results he wishes. Juvia thinks that this is not a wise decision as Fairy Tail is known to be very protective of their guild mates and if we are to face against Makarov Drayar, the Titan, we will most surely fall. Juvia responded. Though Master Jose is also a wizard saint, it is a well-K actually pounded Jose into the ground during one of the annual meeting of the guild masters when Jose badmouthed Fairy Tail. Gajeel inputted. Ah, yes I heard of that. Drayar's temper is his downfall and so I am sure your master will know to exploit it. Naruto chuckled. His initial method to start the war is quite nice, but I am much more inclined to accept his second attempt to start the war. Very well, I shall be on my way. Huh? Both Phantom Lord Dragonslayers expressed their confusion, but before they could question the Ogono Fujin any further, the wind user cut off the communication link. So, it seems Jose is nearing the time to start his war with Fairy Tail. Naruto said as he pulled up his face mask, covering the entirety of the lower half of his face. So it's time to make our own preparations. First step is to be initiated I presume? Kurama smiled widely as Naruto gave a nod of confirmation. Kurama sat atop Naruto's hair as the blood reached to his trenchcoat's neckline and pulled up the hood. His sapphire eyes glowed in the darkness the hood created before a sonic boom was heard. Naruto zoomed off towards his destination. Oaktown, the home of the Phantom Lord Guild. Phantom Lord Guildhouse, Oaktown, Fury. Within the dimly lit guild house, many of the Phantom Lord members were bouncing in excitement and they were just informed of the news. "We're finally gonna hit those fairy bastards where it hurts," one member yelled as he clanked a mug of mead with his friend. "I know, right? We're so gonna pay them back for daring to try and become the top guild in Fury." As the guild members chatted loudly, discussing any potential battle plans their master had prepared, they were interrupted by said master. Jose Porla, the master of Phantom Lord, was a tall, young, lanky man with pinkish-colored skin. His hair was a deep purple color and extended just below his jawline. His eyes were sharp and bore black irises. A thin mustache outlined his upper lip and bent down at a near 90-degree angle on either side of his face.
His lips were adorned with black lipstick. The guild master's outfit consisted of a stereotypical wizard's outfit with a white dress shirt with the medallion of the 10 wizard saints pinned at the location of the top button and a pair of red pants. Over his shirt, he wore a dark purple cloak that was outlined with a lighter purple. The hem of the cloak and the shoulder areas were styled in a way that they appeared to be jagged. Atop his head was a stereotypical wizard's hat which was the same dark purple as his cloak with a tiny image of the Phantom Lord symbol emblazoned in red. Attached to his back were a pair of black bat wings and to complete the outfit was a pair of red shoes with furry yellow balls on the front and back of each shoe. 2 rings were worn on his fingers, one of which bore a spherical gem. Standing next to the mustached man were both of their guild's Dragonslayers. Juvia Loxer, Dragonslayer of Water, daughter of Levia the Water Dragon and Gajiel Red Fox, Dragonslayer of Iron, son of Metallicana the Iron Dragon. Above Juvia was a small cumulonimbus cloud that seemed to follow her around. The rain that fell from the cloud pattered against the pink umbrella the blue-haired woman held. Drip drip drop. The young, curvaceous woman muttered repeatedly to herself. "Speak of the devil and he shall appear." One of the guild members muttered beneath her breath. Juvia suddenly stopped her mutterings before her eyes settled upon the female guild member. Suddenly, said guild member was surrounded by a torrent of water. The water then froze and the guild member was trapped within a block of ice. Juvia does not take kindly to people referring to Master Jose as the devil. Even Juvia's own guildmates. Now my dear Juvia-chan. They are merely speaking their minds and they do have grounds to call me a devil seeing as I plan to start a war. In fact, I take that title as a compliment. So please, if you would be so kind as to release the young lady from her icy prison. Juvia's eyes narrowed at the frozen woman before nodding. Juvia will obey Master Jose. She snapped her fingers and the ice block liquefied once more and the female guild member fell to the ground, gasping as if she had just been drowning. She coughed out quite a bit of water before looking up Juvia, glaring at her, only to cringe in fear when the Dragonslayer looked back at her with a terrifying look. Her blue eyes bared the slitted pupils of a reptile and her fangs were bared. Do not look at Juvia with such eyes. Juvia hates those eyes. Calm down, Juvia-chan. Jose said with a frown. Juvia nodded and she returned to a stoic state of mind. Jihehe, so, master, are preparations complete? Yes, Gajeel-kun. The war we plan to start with Makarov's idiotic guild is soon to begin. The pieces are beginning to fall into place and soon I will have the joy of crushing Fairy Tail into dust. He laughed. Gajeel grinned toothily at that before the grin vanished as he looked at Juvia's face. Despite her emotionless facade, he was the only one that could see through her mask and he could see that she disapproved of her master's want to start a guild war. Juvia loved her guild and she loved being a part of Phantom Lord. But this act of aggression threatened the chances of Phantom Lord remaining as an active guild of the Magic Council. However, Juvia was still loyal to her guild and Master Jose, so even if the orders were wrong, she would carry them out. My fellow members of Phantom Lord, he addressed the populace of his guild. The time has come for us to exact our revenge upon the guild of Fairy Tail. We will spill their blood and crush their guild beneath our very heels. No matter what, we will be victorious. What says you? Victory to Phantom Lord. Down with Fairy Tail, was the simultaneous response from them all. Jose grinned widely. Excellent, he thought. Gajeel, prepare yourself for your travel. You're to head to Magnolia Town and to destroy the Fairy Tail Guildhouse. Let's see how Makarov responds to his home being broken to the ground. Jose chuckled darkly as a maniacal grin spread across his face. However, all noise was interrupted by a knock on the large doors of the castle-like complex that was the Phantom Lord Guildhouse. Who could that be? Jose wondered. You? He pointed at the male guild member standing a few feet below. The muscular man pointed at himself and Jose nodded. Yes, you. Go check the doors and see who it is. The man nodded as he rose of his seat. Yes, Master Jose.
He then ran towards the large wooden doors of the castle and proceeded to open them as a trio of knocks were heard as the man neared the door. The man carefully began to open the doors with a creak before the doors were harshly kicked open. The man humorously spun through the air as if he were a shuriken and slammed into the stone walls of the castle hard enough to cause it to crack. The doors swung open to reveal a black hooded figure. The figure entered the dimly lit guild hall and waltzed in as if he owned the place. Gajeel and Juvia watched from above as the hooded figure glided along the cobblestone. Their slitted eyes narrowed as they studied the figure's movements before they sniffed the air. Male. His magic is extremely powerful, but this scent, it's very familiar, Gajeel thought. This scent. No, it couldn't be. Why is he here? Juvia's eyes widened as she looked at the hooded man below. The water Dragonslayer slightly shuddered and Jose raised a curious eyebrow at his female Dragonslayer. Oi, who the hell do you think you are? You can't just waltz in here and think you can mess with Phantom Lord. A male member grabbed onto the shoulder of the hooded figure's trench coat. The hooded figure snarled like a beast and white eyes seemed to stare into the soul of the man before the man raised his hand. Claw-like nails flashed through the air and blood spewed from the man's body as his throat was torn out.
Do not touch me, human. The figure growled out, just as he saw one of his guild members killed. Whoever this person was, they were no stranger to killing as that slash seemed precise and swift. Jose didn't say anything as he watched the guild members leap at the hooded figure. Weaklings. The figure seemed to dissolve into the wind before blades of wind sprung forth from various locations, slicing through the assailants. The Phantom Lord members all fell to the ground, bleeding out from the length lacerations that decorated their bodies. The figure then reappeared atop the balcony where Jose, Juvia and Gajeel were standing. Hello, human. The shining-eyed figure grinned beneath the face mask he wore. Jose blinked in shock at the speed this intruder moved at. Who are you? Was all he could ask. Now, Master Jose Porla of Phantom Lord, I assume you have been planning this for quite a while. The figure spoke, completely ignoring the wizard saint's question. Planning what? Jose asked with narrowed eyes. Why your little escapade to start a war with Fairy Tail, of course. We all know that is what you aim to do, so there is no need for you to lie or deceive me. In fact, I am here to temporarily lend my services to aid in your little quest to bring down Makarov Drayer's guild. The figure stared at Jose and Jose stared at the hooded figure. Shining White gazed into pitch black before Jose seemed to consider this stranger's offer. Your quick and flawless killing of my guild members show that you are no stranger to killing and that you are actually quite powerful. May I ask what brought you to my guild? Why do you want to participate in this guild war one plan to engage in? Call it a lust for destruction, human. The figure grinned toothily beneath his face mask. Now allow me to answer your first question. Allow me to introduce myself, Jose Porla. The figure threw back his hood to reveal the spiky blonde locks of a young man. Glowing white eyes shone that much brighter as the wind picked up. Suddenly, a swirl of fire appeared next to the blonde and a large three-tailed fox the size of a small horse materialized out of the crimson flames. Why you're the... It really is him, Juvia squeaked. When the bastard said he was on his way, I did not expect this at all. Gajeel thought. We are the Ogano Fujin and Anabi Myobu. Naruto started and Kurama grinned toothily as his tail swished back and forth lazily, and we would like to join Phantom Lord.